last week. So what's going on? How are you evolving? And I want you to get into that thing that you broke it down. And I'm not completely convinced about that clause about the term limit. When does it start and when does it end? You kind of gave it to me last night, and I'm still letting it marinate to understand it. Maybe my brother Sariang and the viewers can hear from you too, if you can get down to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Sariang. My brother, it's always a pleasure, being with you and having this conversation. Paramos and I, even offline, we continued this conversation. We are going at it. But now, look, I think what Nenege is saying and what he sees doing is the way forward.
Sorry, I kept.
Sorry, sorry. I was following your lead. Now, what she was saying and what she, I think let's follow her lead. Because the way to go about these things is no matter what reservations you have, no matter how bad and off the start, everything went off. It's important to always recognize and realize, and always remember that the key here is to make sure that we continue to have a conversation, we continue to negotiate, because the constitutions come out of a negotiation process. That's always the case. You have interest groups that want to influence it in one way or the other. This one says this should be in, that one says that should be in, and everybody, at the end of the day, the country's interest also is being pursued by other groups. And so it keeps, this is the kind of marinating process that it goes through. And in the end, you end up having a document that may not be satisfactory to everybody, but at least everybody can live with. And I think in the end, that's what we need to strive for. So I like the fact that the Bar Association, despite their reservations, despite their concerns, are saying, look, let's continue to have a conversation about this. Let's sit down, let's discuss it, let's see how we move forward. Let's make this happen. I think this is very, very, very critical. Last time I was here on the program, I stressed on that, and I want to keep emphasizing on that. Because otherwise we keep going back to, this is what the government did, this is what they should have done, they didn't do that. Yeah, the government, maybe they went about it the wrong way. Okay, fine, I agree. The discussion should have taken place before, it did not take place over there. Fine, I get that too. But at the end of the day, now we have a document on the table, and what that means is this: a constitution is literally a contract that literally is binding on every citizen, every position, every leader, every young and old, powerful and weak, sick and healthy, wealthy and poor. It's a binding contract on each and every one of us. Now, in the contract negotiation, the first thing that tends to happen is somebody makes an offer. Now, the government has made an offer. They put an offer on the table, which is a document that they are saying, hey, this is what we want you guys to buy. And now it's up to us to accept that offer. So the acceptance part is where we are. And the people are saying, wait a minute, the terms of this contract, we want to change, we want to adjust it, because the way it is written so far at this moment right now, we cannot accept it in its current form. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Now it's time for us to sit down and now negotiate the terms of this contract. Because now, once this thing passes and it becomes binding on all of us, we all have to live with it in one way or the other. The only other, option would be to make amendments and this, that, and the other, which is also possible. Let's not discount all those possibilities in the future. So we don't have to get gung-ho about this provision or that provision if we can live with it until when we can make some adjustments or some changes. This is what many countries have had to do, where they are saying, okay, we can never agree on this one, but let's just go ahead and live with that for now, and we make changes to it as we move forward. The United States had to do that. So many controversial things in the original draft of the Constitution that literally were gutted along the way through amendments, and sort of things were introduced that were not there before through a process of amendments, like I said. This is all possible. So let's not kind of shut the door down, basically trash everything in the end because we are not getting everything at the beginning. Because when you do that, then in 5 years to come, well, the next election cycle, when this election comes in 2026 and we get it done with, then the next election, so we'll be back at the same conversation about the Constitution again. And I'm telling you, if anybody thinks these issues are going to go away, you better think again. They are not going to go away. At that time, again, if you guys remember very well, the issues that we are discussing now were exactly the same issues we are discussing last cycle when the 2020 proposed draft was was put out there. It's the same argument. And now elections have come and gone. That one didn't pass. We are here now and having exactly the same conversation. For how long are we going to do this? I don't know, but I don't think it's wise to keep kicking the can down the road only to come back and start the conversation from where we left off with the same issues and the same problems. So I think it's very, very important to sit down and then look at all these provisions that people have issues with and deal with and see how we can agree on something and move forward as a country. Later on, the ones that we can really make adjustments to, we can come back to that later. But coming to your question about the term limit issue. Mm-hmm. Look, again, I've said this last time, and every lawyer will tell you this. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a student of law correctly, but I'm not a lawyer. Let me qualify that statement. Let me make sure I make that clear. The point is, when it comes to the Constitution, the Supreme Court is the one with original jurisdiction as it relates to its interpretation. In other words, to sit there and say, this is what the Constitution says and this is what it means. Only and only the Supreme Court. No lawyer can sit there and tell you definitively what a provision means and what it says. No lawyer can do it. Only the Supreme Court can do that. I mean, everybody else is just expressing what at this point I would call an opinion. So everybody, and I mean literally everybody, even if you ask a judge, a sitting judge right now, and say, what does this mean as far as it relates to the law? They can just give you an opinion. In the end, it's only when you take it to the Supreme Court and say, what does this mean? What does it say? And then the Supreme Court obviously makes a ruling on it. That's when you can say, okay, now this is what it means. But otherwise, it's really literally just opinion. So on this term limit thing, the interpretation of it, yes, is kind of vague. And many people can kind of assign their own meanings to it. I get that. My reading of it is that this provision, the very provision, if I hear people saying, well, they did this so that Barrow can be able to run again in 2031. I'm saying if that's really the goal here, then whoever kind of couch the language the way they did a very, very poor job. Because if I want Barrow to run in 2031, I will not leave the language in such a manner that the Supreme Court can easily rule that no, this term that Barrow is serving is counting. It has to be counted. I wouldn't do that. I would make it clear that look, Barrow should be able to run in 2031 by framing the language in a manner that makes that crystal clear from the provision. But that's not what is happening here. This language, the way it is written, from my own interpretation, again, the Supreme Court and only the Supreme Court can make this issue clear. From my own interpretation of it, is that Barrow, this term that Barrow is serving counts. Here's why I said that, Musa, and I'll repeat what I was telling you yesterday. Is that, first off, I am hearing this argument that people saying, well, because it says 2 terms, the term can only, that's 5 years, it has to be 5 years. So it will only start when this when this new constitution comes into force, is when the counting will start for the 5 years. And I'm like, no, whoa. Now, so basically you are saying that it's not, because I hear people say it cannot be retroactive. Well, if that is the case, then the 5-year term that begins at the promulgation of this constitution then will mean we cannot have an election in 2026. Then we have to wait until sometime in when it passes in 2025, in 2030. That's when we are supposed to then have the election. So the term that literally he serves out the term that is stipulated in the constitution then. So to me, the current term that he's serving is considered a term and is called a term for a reason. And that term of 5 years still is valid. The promulgation of the constitution doesn't invalidate the fact that he's serving a term of 5 years, which is supposed to end in 2026. Unless you are invalidating that and say, look, okay, these years that he served already, those don't count. So we're going to start the counting now. Well, if you're going to start the counting now, then let's do the election in 5 years after 2025, which is 2030 then. Then you cannot hold an election in 2026 because then the counting will mean 1 year, boom, in 1 year, then you are holding another election. I mean, that's whole. I think that creates so much confusion in of itself that to me, a Supreme Court will not consider that. They will be saying, look, 5-year term is 5-year term is what it says, and the 5-year term at the end of 2026 means Barrow has served a term, and 2026 to 2031 will mean a second term, and then he's term limited in that regard. He cannot run again in 2031. That is, for me, that's how I'm looking at it, because constitutions generally, and you hear these phrases always: the letter and the spirit, the letter and the spirit. That is what is actually written as relates to the text itself, what it means, and what it was intended to actually do. So this is why most of the time they go back to the intention of the framers, what they really intended for it to mean, then they try to apply that. Now, in this regard, based on popular belief and based on all of us and the very draft that they took this from, that they are using, that they have adjusted, which is the 2020 draft, proposed draft, that 2020 proposed draft literally, what it was saying was Barrow's term that he was serving is at that moment when the constitution passes will count. That's what those framers, the CRC is the group I'm talking about. That was their intent. And there was no ambiguity about it. In fact, the intent was so clear that they tried to couch the language in such a way that it would literally reflect that. So if a Supreme Court is going to go ahead and interpret this, most likely they'll go back and look at, okay, what was the original intent of this very provision? The original intent was the term that the president is serving at the time of the passing of the promulgation of the Constitution will count. This is what it would, to me, again, like I said, this is all opinion at this point until a Supreme Court actually issues a ruling on it. It's all opinion. But for me, this is how my reading of it at the end of the day. So in the end, I think that when we sit down, we can obviously push that issue of clarification. And I agree with that, where people are saying, but why leave it to chance? Why not just make it clear? Well, if we cannot agree on that, and the ones that are bringing these ones to us are saying, no, we cannot compromise on that, and we are insisting, no, then we can make a simple compromise in that regard and say, okay, we're going to leave that to the Supreme Court to then be the final arbiter on that one. And we can do that. And I think at the end of the day, the popular sort of aspiration of the people will prevail. I do believe that in my heart of hearts. So we need to put all these things in their proper context, so that in the end, we don't shoot ourselves in the foot by way of literally trashing this. And the next election, after the next election, then we are back at the same argument once again, and then having this conversation. Well, till when? So we need to do that. Now, the other provision that they are saying they took them out, we need to go back and maybe insist, like the one on leadership and I believe, yes, we can go back and insist on those and say, look, these are the best practices that are we aspire to be, to inculcate and propagate in our country. So it'd be good to have the Constitution in the form of spirit reflect that, by way of our mentioning them in clear terms, that this is really what we aspire for, this is what we want. And yes, so that when we make subsequent legislations, because every legislation that you pass in Parliament has to conform, has to be consistent with the Constitution, that those people who are going to be passing laws in Parliament will pass those laws with that in mind, that look, the spirit of the country and the aspiration of the country is to make sure every law we pass tilts and leans towards this idea of making sure leaders are accountable to the people, and that they act with with utmost good faith and with the highest of morality and all that.
We're definitely going to come back. We're definitely going to come back to you. We have so Saria, now you know why I said that that idea is still marinating. I'm not kind of putting my arms around it. Because for me, when the term starts, it's really confusing to me. I wish it was I'm not a lawyer. I want it clear as day. If it passes in April of 2025, meaning the current term, does it start then? We start counting? That's what I want it as clear as day. That is one term. 2026 will be the second term. He can run again. If you leave it ambivalent like that, and saying, well, the Supreme Court will take care of it. I don't know about that. I don't want to do this Senegal thing. I think that thing. There is a guest. I'm not sure who it is. Karamba wanted to come in, but Karamba, for whatever reason, your device is disconnected because you were suggesting that you have a solution. How do we move forward? So I really wanted to hear that. So if you can,
I thought Karamba was on.
Yeah,
he was
Musa,
on.
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you, including my good friend Banka, who has communicated me from the Gambian community last week. He said I live in Florida, so I don't want the constitution. But I thank you for giving this important topic the treatment that it deserves. I mean, dedicating 2 weeks discussing this is testament to how you guys value this particular topic, and also more importantly how seriously you take your civic duties, because I think this is the discussion we all need to be having. And I want to state 2 things for the record. We deserve and we need a constitution, and everybody should have the orientation that we need to work towards getting a constitution. And then I want us to work towards that as an objective, as a country. But let me just frame it as to where we are. We are where we are because the president of the Gambia has shown tremendous bad faith. The first time around, he clearly demonstrated bad faith. He didn't only show it, he demonstrated it. Because he spent 116 million of our scarce resources only to send his attorney general to come and chaperone his members in parliament to basically throw it in the dustbin. That is what he did. We are beyond that now. What he has done the second time is also another demonstration of bad faith. And the reason why it is a demonstration of bad faith is that he's not showing leadership. He claims that he wants to have a legacy, but having a vibrant, progressive constitution is not a legacy that he cherishes. He is doing this not because he has any regard for the Gambian people or that he values the constitution itself. He's doing it because he's subject to external pressure. And then I agreed with those who said this is a family affair. I mean, it is a shame that we had to have Jonathan come in and then attempt to mediate about our founding document. Why should it ever take that? Because the president, who is the actual, who has authority over the whole country, who should be leading the whole generating a national consensus effort, has no interest in working and then bringing a constitution because he thinks he has 1 or 2 vital interests, personal vital interests. For a person who is from Mankamankunda is one person. He wants to take the whole country hostage. That is where we are today. Now, could he have done this thing differently? Yes. But right now we are running against the clock. We need to find a way to come to a solution. And what I propose we do, because what is gazetted will not pass. It cannot pass. And it will not pass. So therefore, trying to remove it from the gazette, you are going to run against the clock. If the president wanted good faith, he could have said, look, I'm withdrawing this week and then I'm substituting it with the clean draft. Whatever he wants for himself, he has members of parliament. He can have them negotiate whatever it is that he wants. They will do his bidding. Those who are aligned with him, they will do whatever he asks them to do. So he could have just shown good faith and said, look, I am a little bit embarrassed about the fact that we are 7 years into our transition, and this was a legacy and the highest priority for all Gambians and for all of our donors, that we have a constitution that removes us away from the Yahya Jammeh constitution. I have not done it now. Let's try to do it. I'm going to bring the clean draft, but I have this and this and these political personal interests, and I'm going to work very hard on the floor of parliament to get my guys to get it for me. That would have demonstrated goodwill. Bring the clean bill. Trust the process. And then all of you, Banka, Sariang, and Musa, you speak like pragmatic Americans because you've spent a lot of years here. You just want to get the job done. The way you get the job done is you set the ball rolling by demonstrating good faith. You bring everybody along and then make the sausage in the floor of the parliament through the committee process. Any amendment that you want, that you believe has merit, push it, and then let the committees discuss it, let them vote it out of committee, let it come back to the floor of the parliament. And then whatever bloodletting needs to be done, let it be done there. We can understand that as the normal legislative process in a democracy. But in any negotiations, especially something as important as this, you have to do two things. You have to show good faith, and then also you have to work on a sequencing procedure that does not abort the whole baby. You know, what all of you are expressing as a concern, and I agree with that concern, and I share it with you, which is that, you know, if we throw this thing out again, we are back to square one, and that benefits, it hurts the country. But the president doesn't care. He will say, well, I have attempted to do it, and then blaming your political opponents for your lack of leadership is not a substitute. You have to show leadership. Bring the draft. And then say, fight as hell. I am willing for him to call himself over there and then twist the arms of his MPs to say, give me this. Because he seems to be sort of obsessed with what he can get for himself and protections that he can get for himself and his ministers and all of that. Go and fight it. Fight it on the floor of the parliament if it has merit, or if your people think they can give it. And then the threshold is very high for amendments to the constitution. You understand? If you have the votes, then we can all swallow our bitter pill and say, okay, he got the votes. But he knows that he cannot fight and win those battles over there because of the high threshold. Then he decided to upload the thing with a poison pill. That cannot be approved. So the solution I am proposing, Musa Moine, one, he can instruct his people, withdraw what is gazetted, and then substitute it with the fresh draft. He can do that. Do that this week, and then we'll still be fine on the calendar.
Okay.
And then say, I'm going to fight on the floor of the parliament for the amendments that I want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Karamba, most likely that is not going to happen. Like
Yes.
pulling and then replacing it with something else. We are where we are.
Yeah.
Don't you think, based on what you are saying, that this 2024 can still go forward, and then the National Assembly will get a stab at it? We will agree to disagree. They'll take it to the committee level, and they will debate it. And the things that you are talking about, they can give and take and find a common ground. Because what you're saying, most likely, that pulling and then bringing back the 2020 draft, I don't see that happening. Okay. That's the problem that I have.
Okay, let me try to delineate the difference between the two approaches. Gizinga, obviously he can go. It's a one-day thing. Just withdraw this one, replace it, and then bring the clean bill. He can do that. Now, if you say he is not going to do that, that goes to his motives. Why? Well, give me one good reason why he shouldn't do that. Bring a clean bill and let us fight it out in the floor of the parliament.
They would have done it in the first place.
Okay, so that is what I'm trying to tell you. It is bad faith. If you have bad faith, you cannot get the job done. He's the president, Musa. If you were the president, pragmatic Musa Jeng will want a deal done. And you will demonstrate that by the way you sequence the legislative battle. You come with good faith. At least, good faith. This is what, let's fight clean. I'm going to bring the clean bill because, Musa, the 2020 draft is the representative will of the majority of the Gambian people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how can we have him take all of us to ransom? He's one person. Adama Barrow mankamam kundala joge bena nitla. Genud la yo Musa, genud anybody else. Why should he take the whole country to ransom? Because he wants item A, B, C, and D, which he can request, but then show good faith. Bring a clean bill. He does not want to do that because he cannot fight at that floor, because in the legislative process he cannot prevail because of the threshold.
Yeah.
Prevail. So that is why
this Mr. Guest also wants to come in. Let's hear him out. Banka, I know after hearing from Karamba, you are itching. But let's Mr. Guest. Welcome to For the People, by the People.
Thank you, Musa. It's Sergio. I know I put guess. I just wanted to avoid confusion. Yeah.
Oh, Sergio, it's been a while. It's been a minute.
I know. I ran away. But thank you.
Good to hear from you.
You too. And then, I know, how do I call it? We can all agree that we need a new document. That I am going to say we all need that. And then 2020 was a missed opportunity for almost all Gambians. Now, I supported the 2020 draft, and then I campaigned for it. It doesn't necessarily mean I agree with everything that was there, but I think it is safe to say it is a representative document of the people. The fact that CRC engaged in consultation all around the country and then even diaspora. Now, that is just facially because of what they did. Whether the only thing where I will disagree with, and then this is my personal opinion, I call it the people's draft, for the fact that they engage in consultation as required under the statute. That was their mandate. But the document, like here, if you do rulemaking process, it doesn't tell us what was the comment or contribution of Gambians that they engaged in and then why that was rejected. While there is a explanatory note, it only says why they reject certain proposal and then why they accept others. But unless I stand to be corrected, if there was a poll or a barometer survey that came out after the 2020 draft, which would tell us that what was reflected in the draft was the aspiration of most Gambian. I don't know, but I know there was a recent poll that indicated that majority of Gambian, up to 7 out of 10 people of Gambian, once the 2020 draft come in, like few days ago. So based on that, I would say, okay, 2020 draft, from that survey sample taken, it's the representative of most Gambian in 2020. So I would agree with Mr. Ture that it stand against reason to bring a document where the very people you would bring the document to at the end of the day, who are going to ratify it for you, are saying, bring us the old document, and then you are giving them something that's going to die. Now, from a personal point of view, the process, I believe everybody speak to it by saying that, hey, this process is flawed because it's constitutional building and it's supposed to be consultative. And then that wasn't done. So why should anyone agree or even come to the table on a good faith and then discuss it? It's a legitimate point, but to me, that's spill water, spill milk, whatever you want to call it. It is gazetted. Bring it to the National Assembly. That's where leverage is. And then the conversation can start now. If the government wanted to show that, look, while we haven't done consultation, as a token of good faith, we want to open conversation since this document is going to sit 100 days at the, since the document is going to wait at least 100 days before we bring it to the National Assembly. Let's have a meeting, political parties, inter-parties. Where do we all stand regarding this draft? What changes do you want to see come in? Let's have that conversation. By the time the document get to National Assembly, we can all agree that and then go to your respective caucuses and then talk to them that these are our bottom line. These are some of the changes we accept, we hope it will happen over there. If that doesn't happen, you still have the opportunity to kill the bill. That's what I would prefer, at least to have the conversation started. It's neither here nor there that, consultation wasn't done, which is wrong, but people can still consult as it was done in the FGM bill. We can start talking to our National Assembly members here just to have a document. That's my point of view. The document itself, if there is no errata on it, like no changes or no amendment, of course, I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to ask anyone to vote for the document. And then anyone that I can talk to, I will tell them, no, it's not in your best interest. Don't vote for this document as is. Because in my opinion, there are few areas that I find to be deal breakers. But that is not to say entirely the document doesn't have very good provisions. Some of the provisions, in fact, to the point they are so protectionist, like almost some states, even here in the US, where they bring in those kind of protectionist claim to protect their citizens. And then we have seen litigations here where constitutional challenges were done in the US context. And then courts were like, that is okay. State can protect their citizens. There are areas of the document that I very much liked, that are very much protectionist, that are very much progressive. The trade-off is an overly powerful Omega executive. That's the deal breaker for me. That's where I disagree with in the documents. And then some sections of human rights, it appears that the state had this paranoia with its citizens in terms of how do we interact with them. And then there's a lot of prior restraint in certain areas. So that I find, unacceptable. And then no right is absolute. The US Constitution, for instance, the First Amendment, it always says Congress shall make no law that abridge the freedom of speech, assembly, and others. It stopped there. But no justices in our 300 years experience think of that to be an absolute right. We know it's subjected to limitation. No judge, no jurist would interpret that to be an absolute right. So it begs the question, the 2020 draft, for instance, if you take a specific provision where I have fundamental issue with, like the right to assembly, it sincerely undercut some of the traditional notion of freedom of association and assembly. And then they overqualified it. You don't need to do that. They could have just copy and paste the language from 2020 as they did in some of the provisions, like the media freedom is really, really good in this 2024 draft. The right given to media is excellent. We can agree and disagree with other issues, but that's very, very good. I think they just lifted from the 2020. They could have done the same thing for 2024 regarding the freedom of assembly. But my take is probably they did not because of their experience with demonstration, and then they see it as we are afraid of the people. So let's just limit that. So to me, that is unacceptable, but no one is thinking that the right to assembly is absolute. The other thing that I think it's not a deal breaker, but even with one of the panelists mentioned earlier, the right to petition public officials. I mean, I don't know whether everybody reads the document. Traditionally, we all expect, freedom of association and assembly, and then the right to petition public officials for grievance to go in tandem. Why they did not specifically put it over there, but it's still in the Constitution. This 2024 draft, the right to petition. The only switch now is any citizen, which to me I think is a bad idea. You can go to the National Assembly. If there's something going on, write a petition to the speaker, and then the speaker is compelled to read that to the assembly, and then they debate it on the business of the day. I think National Assembly would not be able to do their job if every citizen could just wake up and then just file a petition, and then they have an obligation to address it. They would never get to their business. But we can still reach out to our representative. But the right to petition, I think, should go back as it was. Like if people wanted to demonstrate or assembly peacefully, they do that and then submit their petition to whomever that agency, and then they can have it, review it, and then send a copy to National Assembly. Suppose, let's say that department or agency did not do much about it. National Assembly could call those heads of agency and talk to them. But that's how I don't think it should be DOA before it comes, because of how the process was flawed, how it would appear that there is no good faith. I think what we should look at in terms of we need a document, and then we need it today. Bring it, and then we are going to tailor it. Now, if they said no to that, that's where I would be like, okay, we can go back to what we have, but we are not going to proceed with the document as is. But at minimum, we should be able to open the conversation to change it, because it doesn't mean they can't. Since we have that ability to change it, why kill it? That's
So Sergio, I mean, Banka was kind of setting light on this term limit thing. What's your take on it? Somebody like me who do not really understand all these legalese. I mean, 2-term, 5 years consecutively. I mean, what does that? Can you clear that for us? When does it begin? If it were to pass in April of 2025, would this current term be counted?
My thinking would be it open up for litigation, but depending on the specific jurist. But I think if we are taking the word with their ordinary meaning, most jurists would think that this current term, as the document is drafted, would not come into play. Now, there is ambiguity in the drafting. It's a poor language. It only indicated that no person shall serve in the office of the president for more than 2 terms, consecutive or otherwise, for a period of 5 years. That leaves a lot of things open, because it's for drafting. Meaning, if I serve as a president for 3 years and then resign, this constitution doesn't prohibit me from running again. And then that term would not even count as a 5-year term, because I haven't served that 5 years. It's for drafting, because they don't research or at least consult with a lot of constitution. No one does that. But in terms of interpretation, I don't think any jurist would at least suggest that this current term would apply because of the rules of interpretations. And then the Constitution, like this Constitution come into play, what we call the drafter's intent. You look at the legislative document. The Gambia doesn't have a coup. When a new constitution is coming in, it's actually getting rid of an old document that already provide rights and then responsibilities to citizens. And then the transitional period, which usually will be put in the schedules, would, advise the people, that should know, okay, if this document come into place, we know offices, some of the offices will change, some of them would be altered, and then the qualification would change. So anyone holding certain offices, we would presume you have qualification for that office, even if you don't. The same thing would go. So in rule of interpretation, what normally would happen is this: most jurists will like, okay, any right that is already accrued and then vested, we are not going to touch that unless the drafters intentionally indicated that that would go retroactively. So if they don't do that, juries would not go, so that wouldn't count. But it still leaves a lot of room for litigation in the sense that, okay, this document doesn't specify. Any lawyer can bring a challenge, and then they would have good faith basis in fact and in law to challenge that for at least the courts to interpret, even if you would lose. But you cannot say that lawsuit or litigation is frivolous because there is a basis. The statute is, the section is ambiguous the way you read it. Now, even in the US, when we came with the 22nd Amendment, they were very intentional. It has section 1 and section 2. It expressively indicated that no person shall, occupy that office for more than 2 terms, consecutive or otherwise. You don't put the years there. We don't want to say 5 years because we don't know whether future generation would alter the provision to 7 years. You don't put numbers there. And then you also indicated that any person during the drafting and ratification of this document, holding office, this, provision will not apply to them. They intentionally did that. And then they also indicated that anyone after this document is drafted, served in the office of, president for more than 2 years, we would presume as if you serve for a full term. Meaning, unless if you serve for 1 year and then you bar out, it wouldn't apply. But if you served in that office, even if, let's say, the reason they put that there because we run on a 2-ticket system. If the president dies, and then the vice president take over, if the remaining time you take over is more than 2 years, that would be counted as if you serve 4 years. So you'll have 1. But if it dies, let's say 1 year left, we are not going to impute that 1 year term. That 1 year would be it. So you have to be very intentional.
Yeah.
So that was for drafting. But again, we can address that. I don't think that's our problem. I don't think that should be the problem of the Gambian. That one could be changed. It's just language. We can be very intentional about it. Be like, look, no one should serve 2 years, 2 terms, consecutive or otherwise. And then this current term, which my belief is, because 97 Constitution, we don't have a coup. So when you are bringing in a new constitution, altering the old one, there is a provision in 97 Constitution that indicated that while our National Assembly has the power to pass laws retroactively, it qualifies it. The qualification is rights that are accrued and vested, including rights that were given us because we have a judicial review system, that way, and because of litigations, contracts. You cannot alter those rights. You cannot bring laws to alter that. So the question becomes, someone who occupies the office of the president and is voted in, you have the right to contest. And then once you were declared the winner, and then we intentionally, like the 2020 draft was, written, which indicated that this current term would apply. Does that mean that Constitution did an illegal encroachment on a right that is already vested? So again, this is open to interpretation to the court. The most permissible view would have been, well, the right to vote and be voted for is a fundamental right. The Constitution gave you that. You already acquired that 5-year term unless you relinquish it. And then because there was no restriction, this Constitution should not retroactively go back and then limit that term for me. I should start on a clean state like everyone else without any legal disability going forward. So there, for that term, if it goes retroactively, the argument would be it's a violation of Section 100 because it is retroactively taking a right that is already vested on me. Now, that would be more permissive. Someone who is a little bit conservative could see it like, no. And then I'm sure the drafters, they are lawyers. They probably, pondered about this thing. I wrote to them in my submission. I was like, this is problematic. And then to me, I thought when I reviewed the Section 100 under the 97 Constitution, I was like, I don't think it allows for that. But there could be a good argument by saying that, look, 97 Constitution only gave you the right to run and be voted for. We've never take that away from you. The 97 Constitution never guarantee you to a term limit.
Mm-hmm.
So we are not touching that. So if we retroactively went back, we haven't changed anything that you already drive on the 97 Constitution. You were able to stand, we voted for you, nothing happens. So tell us what exactly are we taking away from you on the 97 Constitution? And it would be a very good argument. So maybe most of the jurists in the CRC see it that way. We've not taken away from you anything that 97 already gave you. We are just saying the citizens decided that since National Assembly has the power to make retroactive law, and then as long as they are very intentional about it, we are saying that if this thing comes into effect, whoever is serving at that time, the first term would start with that. We are not saying the 5-year term period that 97 gave you, we are not altering that. If the Constitution alter that says, okay, it should be a 4-year in office and then alter, then you might complain something.
Right.
That would be interesting. So it's still a very good, compelling argument that it could go. My opinion was we shouldn't even, like most countries that introduce 2-term limit, usually do not do it that way to avoid issues. You go prospectively, not retroactively. That's what was my argument. But the drafters decided.
What do you think of what Sajo is saying, based on your?
Yeah, I think he's making a lot of sense in terms of the importance of these basic rights, and then how critical they are. That if there are omissions, that we take note of them, or if they are there, we need to protect them. And obviously he's a lawyer. I am not a lawyer, so he is more au fait with what is important in terms of fundamental rights. And that's why this is an important project, Musa. I don't think in our lifetimes we'll be involved in anything as important as this binding document, and that's why it needs to be approached with the seriousness that it deserves. And I am in favor of saying let us all approach it in good faith, and then let the process unfold. But if you upload it with the poison pill, I am not saying that you don't discuss it at all. But what I am afraid of is that there are so many big poison pills. There are so many red lines, even for you, Musa. You have your own red line about 2 issues. And that, and I have my red line, and I'm sure lawyer Sajo also has. And but at the same time, we are approaching it with the spirit that let us try to walk around all the minor issues that are not red lines, and then we can discuss those. And then things that lawyers like Sajo believe can be fixed legislatively down the road, we can do that. If we have a vibrant working democracy, then we can walk around those legislatively and then do legislative fixes down the road. But the Constitution, the basics of the Constitution, we need to get that right. And what is not right, Musa Moine, if you don't, it's important how you do the sequencing. Now that you don't believe the president is going to re-gazette it, okay. But what he has to do then is the good faith Bunga he has not shown it in the re-gazetting and the initial round. He has to show that once it is on the floor of parliament, which is that the poison pills have to get out, because you will not have people vote for a constitution that does not remove those poison pills. And I'm not talking about the big issues. Now, something like parliamentary review of presidential appointments. We can work on language that preserves the prerogatives of the president, where he can actually put his own team together, but it also gives parliament a role like the advice and consent responsibilities of the United States Senate. You can work on that language, and then lawyers and people can go back and forth and say, what is the moderate language or middle ground that we can reach that allows the president, because you have to allow the president to select his team.
Whoever
You
he
understand?
wants.
Yeah. He has to. A president. Yeah, and I believe that strongly, that you cannot tie the president's hands so much that he basically has all of his appointments have to pass a parliamentary litmus test, and then who knows what kinds of people will be in parliament, and
Exactly.
you can have anarchy in that. So something like that, I'm not rigid on something like that. I can say bring people like Sadio and other people who understand how you balance rights and proper procedures with what is important to make a democracy work, because you don't want also gridlock, and you don't
Mhm.
want people, and then our culture is such that is susceptible to factionalism. If
Very
somebody
easy.
has it, yeah, if somebody has a little veto power and he recognizes it, he can make the place almost like Italy on steroid. Every night you will have an elected president and he wouldn't be able to govern. We don't want that also, but we don't want an all-powerful president. So things like that, we can work on that, as
Right.
people normally do those things in any democracy. I'm for that. Why? The basic things of the constitution, the fundamental issues, the term limit, the
Yes.
other aspects. For example, I am very much interested in the devolution of powers
Local government.
to local government, and then they have gotten that. That is
Yes.
a that is that is a that is a that's a very important issue for me. You know,
Kramba, if I may add,
yeah,
Mr. Ture, I know
yeah,
when people, because I think I'm not so. I think it's important for Gambians to know one thing. I mean,
mm,
I'm not a history buff,
yes,
but we have to know what type of government we have. And
yes,
then, if I understand, Gambia is a unitary system of government,
yeah,
you know. And then it is okay. There's nothing wrong. There's no law, even in the Hammurabi Code that says we cannot do something unique,
yeah,
have the best of both worlds. But to what extent do we have local government autonomy if we have a unitary system of government? Yes,
yeah,
we give them some devolution of power,
yeah,
but if we want to go by a system like something that has been defined for centuries, if we want to change that and say, no, now we want local government to be completely autonomous, we might as well remove all commissioners or governors, what you call them, and then the mayors actually would be local government authority. We vote for them. They have their own small mini government within unit. We can do that style if Gambians want that.
yeah,
But with what we have, what I think, even here in the US, where we have a federal system, we always have preemption issues. When
yeah.
state legislate exclusively in a domain that is traditionally under state police power,
Mhm.
unless they expressively surrender that to the local government, you don't get that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's all a balancing act. I am satisfied with the language that the drafters put in the 2020 draft as far as local government is concerned, and then I think the rest of it, in terms of strengthening the existing powers or the powers that they enumerated in the draft, can be done by subsequent governments. If somebody comes in and he says, well, we need to run a pilot program where we give a little bit more power to the local government so that they can run primary education. I think you could do that in parliamentary law, and then using the anchor that you have in the thing. So the details, you can always work that out. But that is not a deal breaker for me. We can work on the language on that. But then aspects of what the president has removed and added here, there are so many red lines that unless he shows tremendous goodwill once this thing is stable, and then say, hey, this was just an opening gambit, because you in any negotiation, if you can stake a position, but then also how you sequence in arguing your positions also matters, because if you front load it with poison pill, then the people you are supposed to negotiate with it will say, well, this is just bad faith. There's really nothing for me to negotiate here. But I am sure if he comes in, now that there is consensus on this panel that maybe regazetting is not something that will be a bridge too far for the president to do, because
It will be difficult.
it will represent a climb down. Okay, so when you bring what you have now, you have to bring it with the understanding that it will not pass as conceived, never. And then you also have to identify, and maybe what Sadio was suggesting, during the 100-day period, you can do a conclave and then just say, hey, what do you really think about this and that and that and that and that? And I'm sure every stakeholder will be able to point to them and say, look, this is a non-starter.
You've got to get it out of there. And then, listen, the people that are on his side in parliament, they are sort of, they're at his beck and call. I mean, if he tells them, do this, that's what they will do. Those people are not there to negotiate. They are there just to represent him. Because, that's what it is. When he told them to throw it out, they did. And when he tells them, look, when you go, in committees, we can't have this. The votes are not there. The votes are not there for not including the retroactive clause. He's not going to get the vote to pass it. So that has to go. The other red lines that people are going to discuss in the conclave, he needs to understand that it will not go. But if all of this is just some political game that he's playing, he wants to be able to go back and then say, well, I came back and then I had my conditions, they wouldn't give it to me, so I threw it back out again. He can also get that. But if he doesn't show goodwill, there will be no constitution, Musa. So he has to show goodwill. He hasn't shown goodwill.
So, Banga, you heard what Sajo said. Of course, Sariang has been quiet, my man, for a while, but I think both of us can stay mute and allow you guys.
No, I am on the Sajo bandwagon here in terms of the outlook on this. Obviously, we have a slight difference as in terms of how these could be interpreted in front of by the Supreme Court in case that is the term limit. How it could be the provision, that is how it could be interpreted by the Supreme Court. But I think he kind of he's still leaving room for. He's a judge, so of course he can get into the judge's mindset here better than I can. But at least he's still leaving room for the fact that this could be interpreted in a way where the current term of the president will be counted. Now, when it comes to constitutional drafting and constitutional making, what tends to happen throughout the course of human history, and even the US one was a perfect example for this, because America is a young country and their constitutional making process is it seems very much different from how it happened in many countries. It's revolutionary, let me put it that way. Very, very revolutionary. In the sense that you have people who drafted this thing, they brought it now to the people and try to get their buy-in into it. That's how the US Constitution was drafted. You had guys, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, George Washington, all these people. They literally wrote a constitution, and then they now went to the states to get it ratified. They took a lot of push and pull to get the draft that they had in their hands in the first place. But what tends to happen, and again, this is very important to note, is that there is always this power struggle. When I say power struggle, meaning the drafters who tend to always come from the elite, which is the government in power in most cases and all that kind of stuff, they tend to kind of centralize power when they write these things. It's a strong central government is what they usually, in most cases, have in mind. When they bring it to the people, what tends to happen is the people are interested in a decentralized government. So that push and pull is always present. If you look at the US one, that's exactly what happened. The constitution that was drafted and brought to the states literally gave the federal government basically all the powers. It was a strong federal government. That's why I talked about the federalists, that were, writing all these federalist papers under a fake name to the newspapers to influence the process. When they came to the states are saying, no, we're not interested in a strong federal government like this. We want state sides so that states can also be able to wield their power when they need to. Not the federal government that lords of us. And you still hear that debate and conversation in American politics all the time. States' rights and states' rights. It's a fight from way back when. So in this case too, if you look at the Gambian context, that's technically what is at play here, where the government puts together, they took a constitution that was written, bastardized it to an extent, to kind of give itself more powers than the country or a lot of people are willing to give them. So, and so they brought it now to the people. Now that negotiation is just like in the US case, what happened at the state level is what is about to take place now. Now, and I agree with Sadio fully on this. It's already gazetted. We don't need to withdraw, and I'm glad my brother there, Karamba, considered on that point. Which is that that's not the issue here. When it comes to the parliament, that's the battleground now. That's where all the interest groups, all the influencers, all the stakeholders, everybody basically needs to go in and make sure they leave their mark on the constitution so that it reflects our wishes and our aspirations as a country. This is very, very crucial. So all these other languages, how it should be couched, what should be said, how it should be clearer, how it's not clear, and we should make sure we make it this, all the other rights that we are taking out, or powers or provisions that we are taking out that we want back in, that, this is where the negotiation needs to take place to make sure we kind of get on the same page and have something that we can pass. Because the current document, as we have it, is not as bad as people make it out to be. So that's why I cringe when I hear people saying, let's trash this thing, let's throw it out, let's forget this. I'm telling you, this document has some wonderful.
Let me ask you this question, Ian Kramba. I know I don't want to interject. Sorry for that. I think I think the issue, we all speak in general terms and then confuse Gambians. If we are claiming a particular document is good or this is taken, I think if anyone who read the document understand it, you owe it to the population to let them know. I have a contention with 1, 2, and 3 specifically because of X, Y, Z. And then it was given to us from the people's draft, and then this is a right we are losing now. Rather than speak in general, confusing people. Because even Local Government Act, we already have a Local Government Act. We can all agree that the statute as written is very bad. It gives so much power to the central government. But this, even the 2024 Draft Constitution, again, it raised the question. What specifically does it take away from local government? If we are keeping each other honest, it only indicated, it says local government should have a degree of autonomy. It gives them that, but it only gave a framework, what they should do. It only asks the parliament to pass legislation, how their finance and everything runs. It doesn't say you cannot run your finance, you cannot do anything. It only gives a framework that this constitution, if passed, a local government council will be enacted, and these would be their powers and provision, but National Assembly can pass law. How to handle that? I know that's intentional. You could agree that, okay, because they know there's already an act that is drafted, if this comes into play, the act would continue, and then that act as it stands favors the central government. So it is the legislature, because that's for simple, those are not entrenched provisions. The legislature by simple majority vote could actually throw that LGA act and then just put something that they want. And then they have the numbers. Again, those are the conversations. If you're looking at, you looked at the long-term goal. I'm not worried about if the constitution doesn't spell out that local government has their own finances. That's not my concern.
But Sadio, the good thing about this conversation is that, and where we are right now, it's not even a debate pretty much on the local government and the powers given to them and what not given to them. I think what is it, and it is what I've been hearing all along, is this contention about some few key areas, and they are not more than 3, really. If we can even get those on the table and agree on something, I think this thing will really go a very, very, very long way. Whether we still pass, that's out there. But at least we know it will stand a very, very, very good chance. Which are those? And I mean, even the local government issue is not, most people are not even mentioning it, because I think they all recognize exactly what you're saying. It's not.
I wouldn't push that aside, because there are a lot of people, just for the local government. In the 1997 Constitution, it talks about decentralization. In the 2020 draft, that word decentralization. For this 2024, for whatever reason, it was yanked out. I mean, so that helps. There is a message there. Basically, the federal government wants to bring all this thing back. I mean, let's look at the politics of it. How local
I agree. I agree with that point. What I am saying is, in the end, when we sit down to discuss the key areas that most people are saying, like Kramba, the people like Kramba are using the red line, people are using all kinds of phrases. This term limit, the clarification of the term limit, making that crystal clear that the current term will count. This is one area that has been a key issue.
Yes.
Okay. The removal of Chapter 5, that too is another very contentious issue. The one on leadership and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. That is that's a very, 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 very contentious issue. Now, if you add the what do we call it, the confirmation process to it, which are now come by considering that's not a big deal for him. So for some, that's a big, for the government, that's a big deal and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about both sides have their serious red lines that they tend to push. And if we can just sit down and negotiate on those key three issues, I know we can be able to have some. Now, the Local Government Act, as you said, look, in the Gambia, let's put it out here. The parliament, the three branches of the state, which is the parliament, the judiciary, and the executive. These are the three areas that have been the main issues for most people, because this is where the abuse mostly emanated from, where the executive tries to muscle all these areas and it tries to control the power for itself and then run roughshod on the people. Now, in terms of the local governments and what obtains over there, look, in the end, I think the parliamentary, the parliament itself alone can be able to deal with that aspect, because those are you can easily do that, fix that on the legislative end. If the parliament passes laws that give local governments certain powers and domains, because these are delegated legislations where you can give them, hand some certain powers to them so that they can execute those. If the parliament goes ahead and does its job on that front, I think we can be able to mitigate the executive's ability to be able to have a total control over the local governments and how they do business, how they do this and how they do that. Because the national resources, how they are, distributed. For instance, how government distributes the budget and all these things, how it sprinkles all around the place, mostly are channeled through ministries. But now the taxes that are collected from the local governments, I do believe that the parliament can be able to pass a law that empowers the local governments to be able to keep a certain amount of those taxes to keep it for themselves for a certain development in some area that they are interested in or they are mostly effective at. I think these are things that can be, look, the constitution doesn't have to be a very thick, massive document that addresses and answers literally every question and every issue. U.S. Constitution, and Sergio, again, being the judge here, understands this very well more than I do. And that is, the U.S. Constitution is a small, tiny little booklet. And I mean, it can fit into my pocket. Small little thing. But if you underestimate it, it literally has addressed pretty much almost every aspect, every issue, and because for the ones that are not clear to the rest of us, I think the number of cases that go to the Supreme Court here in the U.S. probably will dwarf any country in the world. Because the U.S., every time people are going to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation of the Constitution in one regard or another, because at the end of the day, they did not bog themselves down with trying to answer every question and deal with every minute detail. These are things that I believe can be dealt with at the legislative level, rather than trying to kind of look at all facets and answer all questions and deal with every issue. And if we do that, we're going to bog ourselves down in endless back and forth, and now making it very, very difficult for us to be able to get a deal. This is why I'm not even trying too much to get into the specific provisions and what he says and try to nitpick and say this, it should say this, it has to do this, it has to do that, it has to do this. We can anticipate it should be able to do it. If we do that, we're going to bog ourselves down in a messy process that's neither here nor there. At this point right now, where we are, this thing has been gazetted. When it comes out of there and it's now in the hands of the parliament, let's make sure we go in there and have it reflect our popular aspirations as a people. The other issues that can be dealt with legislatively at the parliament level, we leave those to parliament to deal with them. Sergio, don't you think that would be a better approach? Now, again, you are the judge here. Maybe you have a different take on it, or Sarian or anybody. But this is just how I'm looking at it. I don't want us to get ourselves bogged down, and then in the end, we are looking at each other next year, next election again, cycle again, and saying, oh, let's talk about the Constitution once again.
I'll let my brother, Mr. Marang, come in. But for me, Banka, I see it differently. And then I think if you don't tell people what the issue is, how are they going to resolve that when it's at the National Assembly? And then my issue, the things you mentioned, to me, those are not even deal breakers. And then that cannot be legislated by Parliament. Those are core principle of separation of power, the power of the executive, judiciary, and National Assembly. That the foundational document has to set that up. And then I'm not saying presidents don't have powers. And then even this confirmation, the draft constitution as it's 2024, while National Assembly doesn't have the power to confirm all appointment, which I think should happen, but it also give them a drawback provision. It's like a catch-22. If National Assembly by 2/3 majority pass a resolution to censor any minister or a vice president for failure to act or an omission, automatically the president doesn't have discretion, but rather to fire that minister right away. So instead of addressing, like vetting the people who are coming in to make sure they are qualified, it gives National Assembly the power to address it when, problem already happened, which I don't think it's a very good idea. Why not subject them to confirmation? And then the impeachment would always be there as a, safe, a fail safe. That's how I see that. But I'm not worried about the two, when the term limits start. And I think, the new constitution, whenever it comes in, term limits should begin with that constitution. It's left the Gambian to vote for whomever they want because it's a 51%, threshold. So that's how I see that provision. My problem is with this document, when they drafted it, they are not drafting it in terms of posterity when you look at the powers of the president. They think one person would be there. It will be almost impossible to impeach a president. Then three separate arms, separation of powers. The impeachment for a president is almost impossible, but the way you want to impeach judges, you make it different. It has to be one rule for all. But if you want to impeach a president based on misconduct, gross misconduct, and all that issues, what you would actually do is Parliament must pass a resolution by 2/3. And then after that resolution, it goes to the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice would then select a panel who would investigate, second guess Parliament's finding, and then say that now we agree with it. If they disagree with the resolution, 2/3 of the people's voice, which is like 2/3 of the Gambian, it just died there because of some few people that the president, in consultation with few, set up to be that council with the Chief Justice and whatnot. And then if they find that the misconduct is sustained, a trial will be held. And then once that trial is held, Parliament again must vote by 3/4, 75% to impeach the president. That is insanity. My argument, and then even from the last 2020 draft, is whenever Parliament by a majority, when Parliament met quorum, a majority pass a resolution to impeach the president because they think that there is a violation of a gross misdemeanor. It has to be high misdemeanor or a felony if president commit that, or a violation of the constitution, which is severe. If majority of Parliament pass a resolution, a trial must be conducted in the Parliament. Chief Justice sit there and then serve to advise them on rule. President could get his lawyer, and then the Parliament that are doing the impeachment get their lawyer. Speak to the people representative in the Parliament. Tell them what you think the president did. At the end of that trial, if the Parliament now vote by 2/3 to impeach, that's only when he leave office. If they cannot do that, that is fine. And then that should be for every judge and every minister. Why overcomplicate it? And then for some of the justices, my issue is not even with these 2/3. Gambians are not reading this document. Those are the ones that I have problem with. If you want to impeach a Chief Justice, you have to bring two other justices from two other different countries, meaning Gambians are not, we don't have the probity to actually sit and then be fair. That is insulting. But for any other justices, those things are there. My issue is the president is the highest paid civil servant in that country, but his earning is not subjected to taxation. His gratuity is not subjected to taxation. That's my issue. Because a poor farmer, if you go to the rice field and they want to sell your rice, you pay tax on that. If the government buy your groundnut, they withheld from it. That's my issue. My issue is a judge served for 10 years, is eligible to retire, but before he retires, you give him almost 75% of his annual income as this is thank you for job well done. Now you are also going to get a pension of 100% of what you are earning, subjected to increment of actual judges sitting. But a teacher, a nurse, or a police officer who finished 20 years of service doesn't get a gratuity for thank you, but his pension doesn't even equate to the salary, probably lesser. There has to be a standard pension scheme for every civil service. If there would be an exception, it should be our military or law enforcement. That's what the Gambians should have conversation about. That's what I think, the issue is. Still now we are catering the constitution for the few. My problem is putting a requirement that if you don't go to school, you cannot stand as a president, or you cannot stand in the National Assembly when 70% of the people you are representing don't even have education. I think the requirement, when it comes to public offices, it is left to the citizens to decide who to pick. Is it true that they might sometimes pick it wrong?
And Sergeant, not to cut you there, it's funny. You are saying exactly what I used to tell Musa about that. In regards to that, I agree with you on a lot of issues that you are raising. It just happens that, like you articulated earlier, and Karamba said, and many said here before, when the CRC went around with the consultation, these are that the president should have at least a high school certificate. Those are the things that they came up with. This is what the people wanted. But I used to tell Musa and even Coach that look, for me, it's not about going to school. I'm not for that at all. I don't believe that. I believe that power sitting in Kian Tankular can be able to, has the capacity to run the Gambia just as effectively or even more effectively than somebody with a PhD. I do believe that. And Musa, if you remember, we had this debate one time. Because
I'm still not buying into that. I mean, I
know. So, but what I'm saying is, that brings me to my point, and that is that these are the areas where we may not be able to kind of make changes on, because otherwise they'll bog us down in a long, drawn-out process. What we need to do now really is to look at the big ticket items and see how do we compromise, how do we come together, how do we make them acceptable to all of us, and then just move forward. And later on, if we want to make changes, amendments are always possible when it comes to constitutions. If we want to make changes, let's have a constitution that we can live with right now. And then if we need to make some amendments later on, then we make amendments later on. I mean, and make it even more perfect, as we say in America. If we do that, then I think it's a better process than really get into all the nitty-gritty and every detail and insist on this has to be the I don't know. I think that will really mess us up.
Bob Sambo.
Yeah, first I have a problem with having to wait in the background for 23 minutes and just hearing banker rambling all over the place, without interjection. And here I was yelling at the top of my voice. I have serious problem with what you're saying, but I was not in. Sergeant,
what was I saying you had a problem with? Musa, what was I saying?
I'm coming to that. First off, I understand your argument about the how voluminous a constitution should be. Like the United States Constitution is very small, of course. But again, failure to explain some of these things in the Constitution, one can argue, is the reason why we have the most politically disastrous decision by those corrupt justices at the Supreme Court. What's his, the guy who travels with the
no. Can I finish? Supreme Court justices are terrible. At this point right now, we all understand the flaws of the document that we have on the table. How we move forward is what we are discussing. Not to go back, but we are moving forward. In my Tim Walsh voice, we are moving forward, not backward. You want to bring it down in a red meat kind of conversation, and that really is not going to. It's neither here nor there. Look. We understand that there is a problem with this document, and everybody.
Banker, please, I don't have that much time. Let me just make my point. You can move forward.
Go ahead.
Okay, here is the thing. Here is the thing. You can say yes, the Constitution does not have to address every issue, but sometimes the absence of that explanation can also lead to problems. And the one point here is when Donald Trump went to the Supreme Court.
My battery is running out. Let me grab my phone.
And pretty much argue that he should have immunity for everything that he has done while in office. Everybody knows that ruling by Clarence Thomas and all those corrupt justices is ridiculous. It was not done based on law. It was done based on politics.
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to this constitution, Musa, we can sit here and talk about everything, I have no problem with the document going to the National Assembly and they having a discussion through their committees,
Right.
invite experts, look at the issues, and address them.
Right.
But one thing that I would not settle for me, and this is me, Pastor Sambajo, as one citizen, is just constitution for its sake. I believe we have been settling for mediocrity for so long, Musa. Everything that happens, you know what? Let's just deal with it. We can handle it later. When should we, as Gambians, settle for the best thing that we can offer? Musa, when it comes to elections, we are looking at the better of the two evils. That's what we're looking at. Everything is, you know what, let's just give this person a chance. When are we going to sit down and say, you know what, we are going to give our country a chance? This draft that was written by the intellectuals in Barrow's cabinet, I don't believe was done in the interest of what is in the greater good of the Gambian people. It was done purely out of selfishness and greed. And that's what it is. But then we are just supposed to say, you know what, let's just, if we just have our 2 terms and just have our 50+1, I think we should be good. No. Man, I believe that we should do much better than that.
This guy is interested in his red. What I'm trying to tell him is all the limitations and the serious issues you have articulated here, every Gambian has articulated already. What we are all saying, Coach, is that at this point right now, what we need to do is let's get all of us at the table and then discuss this and move forward. Well, let's not go back. Yesterday,
Banker, please do me a favor. I don't have that much time. No. You spoke for a long time. I did not interject or anything.
Okay, go ahead. He says we are going back, and we don't want to go back.
No. This man, si go back. Si Barrow's greed. I will go back. What I'm saying here, Moine, I have no problem with this document being subjected to the National Assembly, committees, invite experts, like I said, when you did not listen, but then want to jump in, to look at the issues. But I will not settle for what they are giving us and just want us to settle for it and just try to change it later. That's at some point we have to get.
Nobody's saying settle.
I'm not saying what you say. I'm telling you, man,
Go ahead.
You know,
Go ahead.
Man, to me, and you know what? The politics that these people are playing with this whole nonsense. Sibopam. We've had Dr. Cisse debate on GRTS. And you see exactly where they were going. And Musa, this is something that you were trying to say the week before, and then you of course again and act like you were just attacking another party and all the stuff. You know? Because at the end of the day, we cannot write a constitution and worrying about seeing enemies yet. Or picking a fight with somebody and all that. That's not the thing. This whole issue would have been a settled issue if the process that they started after Barrow, Ahmad and them rejected the 2020 constitution. When they started that conversation, started narrowing said differences or whatever. What would have been the greatest thing, Musa, if Barrow had said, you know what, we've been having meetings with all these organizations, civil society organizations. We're going to call them all together. Let's look at an inter-party committee and all these people. Let's look at where we have differences. If they were to come out of that, you would have had some kind of consensus.
Yeah, fine.
Where in fact those who would be defending it may not definitely, Barrow may not even need to say anything, because somebody like Essien Batijaw who they've been working with come and say, you know what, we looked at this, or somebody from another party could say, we looked at this were some of the things. But again, this notion, Musa, if people had not raised their voice, this memorandum that they say they're going to publish would have never been published in the first place.
Yeah, that should have been done with the
this press conference that they say they're going to have on the 28th would have never been held if people had just kept quiet about it. So to me, I believe that this is a joke of the highest order, and I don't believe Barrow is serious about getting us a constitution. What Barrow wants is a constitution. Come on, Banker, come on.
Tukulor has been.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Every time I mention Barangane, my red meat. That's me. This is my red meat. It will
Musa,
always remain red.
Musa Jeng.
Huh?
You should
Musa,
join the Republican Party. You should join the Republican Party because you are red
That's
completely.
that's
Musa
okay.
Balal just for about 2 minutes because I have to go.
Okay, go ahead, Karamba.
Bala Tukulor Dino, yeah. Just
Barabas,
a couple of minutes.
I don't have the bank na banka go on me because your phone is choppy. Inumba.
Okay,
He's
now,
eating.
Mail Karamba, like 2 minutes.
Gis nga man kay Musa Jeng suma jamme jaw fara su waxe rek suma bop bi day toj jaw fara
Allahu Akbar.
jaw fara mala nak mala baga doomi Musa si
Allah.
Karamba.
moy sa gënal
Yes.
gis nga this is simple.
Okay.
This is very simple.
Anyway, whatever.
It happy to banka bu ma yap.
Karamba.
Yes. Okay.
So let me tell you something. This is very simple. United Nations gave Gambia millions and millions of dollars. Ñu ne leen dem leen ngeen draft a new constitution because Yahya Jammeh lim leen bàyyi very dictatorial. Gambian ci seen boppa sax ñoo wax ne lool constitution living bi commission bi they went around the country and the diaspora spending a lot of money getting Gambians input. That was the most beautiful thing. Gis nga Barrow li problem am Barrow dafa def lu baax rek mu ñëw mu yàq ko yépp. Why is that happening? Because he's surrounded by APRC people. Of course they are going to want to keep some of the Yahya Jammeh things in there. What Adama Barrow should have done and come out on top as a Democrat, when the people, if he went with the people's wishes, take it to the parliament and say, you know what? This is what Gambians want. And I want it too, for them. Because why? Barrow, simply because he wants to continue entrenching himself, decided to change things around. What is more, if you think you own a wapa, Nekanga Kuba, Satu, Fenulo, Kon you also begin the government, Muna water declare as a living man, Bimani made a Malay Ligale, Hadis Binan Mate, Mom like the Lima am, Telila am, Lena Janayom balloon. So I can go on and on. Leave our constitution untouched. I don't give a damn about there are good and bad things. We want what we put in that constitution, period. This is a simple thing. We have to do, when this is time for a referendum, Man Mayo, and anybody who wants to join us, we will do a campaign on this. I am willing, today I am saying to you guys, I'll put my money in that campaign so that we can have digital and in-person meetings about this. Mari Jabar, if you are listening, you're going to be the Gambia contact. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. If it goes to referendum in this state, I'll campaign vigorously against it.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Karamba.
Yes, Coach.
Yes, sir.
I hear you and I feel you, and I associate myself with the position that you take. Moine, Gizinga Waji, he has shown no goodwill. He basically torpedoed the original draft in bad faith. Do that, just in bad faith. And then in all of this discussion, we are forgetting one thing: constitution doko muna jil melni haftan bunga nyawal one person. A constitution has to be able to what the people call, the framers call the power muna. It needs to pass the test of time. So called even the framers, they are not framing it for themselves. They are looking at succeeding generations. We are where we are. And then to get this thing, basically the toothpaste back into the tube, the president has to do a course correction. I still believe that the right thing for him to do, this coming week, regazette the original draft. And then you can do a press conference and say, look, I am putting the original draft, but I have this and this and this interest, and I will fight for it on the floor of the parliament. The reason why that is qualitatively, the reason why that is qualitatively different from in the draft that he submitted with the poison pill that has no prayer, there is a difference between the two. If he did the former, Lolu dafa want a goodwill, and then it will give him the initiative to lead. He is the president, Musa. You and I are ordinary citizens. Other people there is opposition in the parliament. They are representing a section of the population, but he is in charge of the whole country. You have to and then you have to also show exemplary leadership to say this is important for the whole country. If he can do that, but he will not do that. And I'm sure you are saying that because you are just reading the political tea leaves for him, which is he's not the kind of a person who will just say, I'm going to do the right thing. Okay. Lupon Bumgaset, then he also then needs to show goodwill once it is put before parliament. And what is that goodwill? More to unilaterally say, I am not pursuing these position pills. And then some of the important things he must delete. I am going to work with my parliamentary faction for you said how we can work on the language to reinstate it. Lord Soko de Fedina am the initiative, and then everybody, on our side, we want the new constitution. We don't want the Yahya Jammeh constitution. You and I spent 22 years fighting that. Because Yahya Jammeh, and then it was like he's half done. They made a constitution for him. And it didn't serve the country well. You do not make constitutions for individuals, Musa.
Karama.
Yes, so the solution, here is this. Hold on 1 second. The solution for me, because of the hands that we have been dealt with, beforehand, let the president publicly signal by public announcement, the issues that are contentious, he understands them, and then they are a problem, he does not want them to be a hurdle. They are off the table. Then we are going to work on the other issues that are not red lines, because we can quickly build consensus, because whatever comes out of that process, we can all go to the population and say, look, it is a 3/4 loaf and a little bit is better than the full loaf. Nobody can get a full loaf in a democracy. Let's all work for it. And then lichides, whatever can be fixed legislatively, we can do. But certain things have to be enumerated in the constitution to protect our basic foundations of our democracy and our basic rights. Lolu, those things, you cannot negotiate those things away for one guy from Mankamangunda. That's all this is. This is all a charade on his part. He's not doing this out of regard for the Gambian people. Because so funkesa I need, so funkesa I need Musa. Do dem gane danga indi ay jambur ñu ñoo wax la li nga wara def. Lolu du fonk sa askan. So fonké sa askan danga toog ak ñoom nga ne leen loo leen buga loolu la ñooy def parce que man kenn nit lan yéen askan ngeen defut loolu. So if we have to save this thing, he must do a course correction. He is not going. What he does it will not pass. It will fail. It will be voted down. And it will fail.
Okay, Musa.
Yeah.
Let me say this. Look, I get it. All this talk about Barolila or Defuko is what they should have been done. They didn't do that. These people are terrible. They are all evil. They are bad. They are, I get all that spiel. I get it. What I am trying to say is, at the end of the day, a document is on the table. Let's all kind of start to strategize how we all sit around that table and discuss a way forward. Let's not look back, but look forward. Because
but your argument is so flawed, though. Nobody is sure. This whole what we are having here is all part of that conversation. People will express their doubts and all these things, and then it will go to Parliament, because at the end of the day, they are the only people who can change. And then when we come to referendum, we take another thing.
What folks like you are doing, and which is a concern that I'm just trying to share, and that is that you are way more heavy on that spill than literally saying, okay, now that we know they have done it the wrong way and we don't agree with it, we have condemned it. Now this is how we are going to move forward. That's how this can be. And then we put more emphasis.
That's not how I put it. I don't roll that way.
We put more emphasis on how do we literally, because at the end of the day, look, coach, let's get some things off the table here. Just like Karamba just said it, even though he's talking like you. and he's in lockstep with your, spill about making it all about criticism and not the solution. What I'm saying is he just said one thing that I totally agree with, and I think he nailed it. When he said the 1997 Constitution was what Yahya Jammeh gave us, and then for him.
And the 2020 is what Barrow wants to give us.
Exactly.
Jammeh jox nañu 2024 mooy war xaftaan bi 2020 naka 1997 Barrow ñu indil ñun 2024 ne moom mooy xaftaanam bi. So dara
then what we need to do now is to sit down with Barrow and say, look, here's what our demands are as it relates to this draft that you put on the table. And without these concerns, then we may not be able to have a deal. Because here's the thing. At this point right now, the options are very, sometimes we all have good options and bad options on the table. Our options are all bad at this point, which is if we let kill this one and not give it a chance, that is sit down and see how we can sort of make adjustments to make it something that we can all live with. Then the option, the alternative is to go back and live with the 1997 Constitution. If that's what we are really, really interested in, then that's fine too, because let's just say I mean, everybody literally faces the consequence for it.
Problem with that. I have a serious
thank you. So this is why
you can have a serious problem. Nobody here wants the 1997 Constitution, but we are not going to settle for just any Constitution that is thrown at us.
No, but see, that's why I want. Yeah, but no, Fathermost, this is why this is one of the reasons why I want him to back away from or sort of de-emphasize
Coach is not backing away from anything.
And put more emphasis on the notion of us sitting down now and then insisting on our adjustments and changes that we want to see made to this thing. Because if we are going to just sit here and keep regurgitating how terrible these people are, how they didn't do this right, how I get it. We all get that. But they can be up on the No, you guys should have consulted with the people and listen to what you are bringing out so that we can help make changes to it before you gazetted it. People have said that and over and over again. Even the Bar Association, that is very, that is the most reasonable. The Bar Association has been the most reasonable on this matter so far. They are literally, that's what they are pushing for. They're saying, look, we don't like the way this is being done, but we want us to sit down and see, this is how we should do it.
Banka, can I ask you a question?
We still have Sadio. We still have Sadio and Sariang. I don't know whether he's still on. Sariang. Maybe not.
I don't see Sariang on the screen. But what do you want to ask me?
I have to let Banka do the bidding for MPP. So go ahead, Banka.
Banka, let me ask you this. I know we are all afraid to have 97 linger, but are you suggesting we should settle for this? Because 97 Constitution, you as a citizen, gave you a better right if this document, as is, passed in terms of certain fundamental rights. So are you telling me we should settle for that? I would rather stay with 97. It's not perfect. It only gave us the opportunity. You might have a president who doesn't command majority.
That's a very unfair. Sadio, that's a very, very unfair question. Because basically what you are saying, you are just making it sound.
2 seconds ago, you were telling him, Sadio, you are the judge, you should know this more. So,
okay. The freedom of expression, freedom of assembly.
No. I'm coming.
2024 draft, as it stands right now. I mean, I'm just telling you, for you right now, as it stands, the freedom to assembly, freedom of speech, and then in 1997, as it stands right now, and then this 2024 draft, are you telling me 2024 draft gives better protection to those rights than 1997?
Okay, Sadio, you know what I want you to do for me? to answer this question. No, I'm coming. I'm answering your question. You know what I want you to do for me? Sergio.
I'm listening.
Hello,
Yeah,
is Sergio there?
Yeah, no, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, do me a favor. The 2024 proposed draft. Go to the what I will call the Bill of Rights part of it and read for me the individual rights section. Just some portions. Go ahead. Starting from the top and then go down.
No, that I don't think the program has time for that. But let me just give you an example with the right to assemble. The 97 Constitution, as it stands, with amendment. Let me see.
Yes.
I should have that with me. The 97 Constitution in Article 25, Section 1, Paragraph E, it states, every person shall have the right to freedom of association, which shall include freedom to form and join association and union, including political parties and trade union.
Right.
Paragraph F,
Wonderful.
freedom to petition the executive for the redress of grievance and to resort to court for the protection of that right. This is the basis in 1997. So, which begs the question for me, whether you read the 24 draft, whether you actually read it, because I want to make sure.
No, but I want you to do that to us. Read for us the 2024 draft. That very aspect of freedom of association. The freedom, because we want to compare apples to apples here, not apples and oranges. Now, in the 2024 draft, the freedom of assembly, a provision there.
Yeah, freedom of assembly. 1 second. I think I should have it in my email. I'm just going to go there right now. Here is Article 42 of the 2024 draft for freedom of assembly, and then
relating to freedom of assembly, right?
Section 1 says every person has the right to freedom of assembly and demonstrate peacefully and without harm. But here is subsection 2, which actually fundamentally take away. So this is, I read code. The freedom referred to in subsection 1 shall be exercised subjected to the laws of the Gambia insofar as the law impose reasonable restriction on the exercise of right and freedom thereby conferred, which are necessary in a democratic society and are required in the interest of sovereign and integrity of the Gambia. 1, national security. These are the additional qualifications. Public order, decency, morality, or in relation to contempt of court.
Okay, now do me a favor. Go to the 2020 draft. You have that on you?
No, I don't have the 2020 draft with me, but I'm just talking about
do me a favor. Go to the 2020. Now go to the 2020 draft. Here's the reason why I'm telling you this. That if you look at this, those provisions that you've just read out right now, I don't see how that takes away your right to freedom of association or freedom of speech or freedom of assembly. I don't see how it does. Because you yourself said here earlier, and you specifically said it, no right is absolute. And I think this has just been sort of cognizant of that fact, that no right is absolute. But it doesn't necessarily still take away, because any constitution, if you go out there and you protest peacefully in the Gambia tomorrow, this constitution right there, that very provision protects that right to go and protest peacefully. It does. It doesn't take that away at all.
No,
it doesn't.
Oh my God! No, Banka. No, come on.
You guys,
come on.
Hold on.
Come on.
I get the partisan tilt here on Sariang's part and Coach's part.
What is partisan?
What I'm trying to say is,
this is not.
Based on your legal. No, Sadio. Are you telling me that provision takes away? No, hold on, guys. Sadio, now I'm asking you a question, Sadio. Are you telling me that second provision right there that you read, I think it's 42B or something like that, I can't remember.
So, Banka,
takes away.
Banka, 2020, I have freedom of expression. I can
assembly.
Go ahead. I don't level fully killing
We're talking about assembly, not expression.
Oh, okay.
I don't level
fully assembly.
No,
what did you hear that? From Sarian said you and I are on the same page.
This is so sad, Sabaka, in all honesty. In all
Yeah.
honesty, that is a deliberate attempt to restrict rights. That's it. Come
Coach,
on
it's
now,
not
Banga.
even
Coach,
deliberate. You know, this is the
Coach,
problem. From
I
Banca
think
knows this.
Any Supreme Court
Constitution is the
will
flaw.
basically recognize
Really,
the
Banga,
right
the
to freedom of
document
assembly
doesn't
based on
say
that provision. And
you
that
mean the
provision
same
alone.
the
Because
man,
unless you go to the Supreme Court and say these people are carrying arms.
Banca.
Look, listen to me. Unless you go to the Supreme Court and you say these people literally are carrying arms and you can provide proof that they were carrying arms, which was basically not at that point, even on the 1997 Constitution, that is not a protest, a peaceful protest anymore. Unless that's the case, then your right to freedom of assembly is fully recognized and protected.
No, Banca,
That's what the
Banca,
provision is
that's
saying.
not it. No, we gotta be from a legal point of view. 97 Constitution, even though it doesn't put this restriction, no one argues that you can demonstrate with arm. That's not the issue here. But 97
That's all I'm saying.
yeah, no, but that's not the only
Banca,
right to
I want to
assemble.
read freedom of assembly in the 2020 draft. Freedom of assembly, 5-0. Every person has the right, peacefully and unarmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present
There you go.
public authorities or private institutions. That's all it says. Freedom of assembly.
Very good.
So
Yeah,
and then
very good.
And Banca, this is the crux
I
of the
don't
matter.
see.
The fact
No,
defend Banca,
no, Coach, nobody. Maybe
No, the fact that the government decided to add that
look,
provision to it.
I don't see how that language is so different.
Oh my
No,
God.
Coach, I don't see how the language right there. If this one is saying without arms, if this one is saying, well, your rights are limited in regard to.
Banca, the subsection.
Coach,
The subsection. You know what
arm.
we're talking about.
The arm. Let's
Come
forget
on.
about the arm.
We're talking about the subsection.
Okay.
We can all concede that in
All I'm
Gambia,
saying
you
is,
know,
Come on now, Banca.
Banca, let me. We
No,
can all concede
Sadio.
in Gambia.
Guys, I have to leave you because I have to get back to work. You know. But anyway, thank you, Banca, for ruining my whole break that I took to participate in this
I
program.
am going to ruin it even further. If you keep
Coach,
listening, I'm going to read it further because at the end of the
before
day,
you leave.
let's go back.
No,
Banca, I'm not even talking about
This is just what I want to leave you guys with. The same banker that had a problem with the Public Order Act, Sibopap, because it's just what it is. It's just reinforcing the need for the presence of the Public Order Act like we have in the Gambia. Which
Thank
is
you,
meant
Coach.
to
You have to be a
the
lawyer
Public
to
Order
understand
Act
that.
has
You
done
get
nothing.
Coach, you
But
have
anyway,
money.
I'll leave you guys.
Coach.
Thank you.
Coach,
Coach, as usual, my hat tip off to you for
But
being
Banca,
consistent as consistent can be. You understand that? You are the real activist and you stand on the principle of freedom of speech.
Banca Fumneka getting nañ ko ci activism.
Non defon sila da banka la kumola. Ba momi alon ko protest. He protest the signa 22 years. Today you are trying to stem them to the public act. That's what it is about in 2024. And that's where Sadio is trying to allude to, hey, let's make sure we don't embrace this too much. Let's look at the ingredients inside it. You know?
Yeah, the problem, in fact, is not only to bear arm. We don't have that right. No one is going to expect anyone to demonstrate bearing arm. That's not the issue.
That's yeah.
Both provision, 2020, the one Mr. Jeng read, and then 1997, it doesn't qualify it, but we know it's not an absolute right. Meaning, even here, that's how it's written. But there's what we call reasonable place, time, and manner. You cannot go in front of, when Times Square, people are going to walk, you want to block it and say demonstrating. Court has interpreted what we call reasonable place, time, and manner. There's a place for everything. What 2024 did into this right, because the Constitution is the flaw, you cannot say it's unconstitutional. It actually qualified that right to a point that it dilute the basic, meaning you can bring any legislation that would fundamentally take away from that right. It could tell you cannot march every Saturday, or you cannot do this as long as they count it in public order. The limitation there give them parliamentary right to fundamentally restrict it, because the derogation actually happened in the Constitution, and then you cannot challenge it.
Sadio, I disagree with that. Sadio, I disagree with that. I don't read it that way. Look, let's put it this way. I mean, the parliament, if it passes a law like that, that is going to restrict people's rights based on those a flimsy reason. Absolutely, the constitution will, the Supreme Court will find that unconstitutional. Again, Parliament always passes laws or even executive acts ultra bias all the time, where if you challenge those things at the court level, they find them to be unconstitutional. So a Parliament passing any law to do anything is always possible. But when people challenge these laws in court, I can bet you the Supreme Court, because it's not like the way you are saying it. A parliament can just come out there and pass a law and say, "Oh, you cannot protest on Saturday because of." No, listen to
in Gambia, there's a case law right now in Gambia.
Supreme Court. No, let me say this: if you take a case like that in front of the Supreme Court, you know what? You know, one of the things I have noticed about us as a people, and it's okay, we are very cynical of our institutions, both the executive. The executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branch. We are very, very cynical of them. So now what we are trying to do is, in writing these constitutions, we want to go in a kind of get into the nitty-gritty and the minute, most minuscule of every detail, and make sure everything says exactly how we want it to say. And so, because that's the only way we can feel better about it. What I'm trying to tell you is, no matter how crystal clear we try to be on these things, people will act. Government always is the problem. They will always act in ways that will force us to go to the Supreme Court or to interpret the Constitution for us. The government always is violating rights in every country, in the United States, in everywhere. We, as vigilant citizens who are very vigilant, eternal vigilance is what we need, where we make sure that if those violations take place, we step up to it. But Gambia, we don't take anything to court. We don't challenge anything to court. That's why even our jurisprudence is not rich at all. In America here, that's why they've been talking about tort reform and all these things, because every little thing they go to court for it. In the Gambia, we don't do it. In Gambia is the only place where people are saying, we are on a dictatorship. We are on a dictatorship. When I'm saying to them, look, if they violate your right, the courts are there. Go to the courts. I mean,
there's a precedent in Gambia. I don't want to cut you short, but Gambia has a precedent. There is a case on the Public Order Act that went to the Supreme Court of the Gambia, just to bring back to your point. And then I know you know this because you probably, you in Gambia, you would study jurisprudence in Gambia even more. The 97 Constitution, as it stands, did not put certain limitation where you can even do prior restraint in time of assembly. It's not there. We know it's not absolute. So when Public Order Act was enacted, it put a prior restraint on people's right to assemble, meaning by securing that permit, instead of notification, you are subjected to the government consent to permit. That's what Public Order Act did. It was challenged because allow me to learn. The Constitution doesn't allow for prior restraint. Almost even in the US, 200 years of jurisprudence, any prior restraint is considered per se illegal. What did the Gambia Supreme Court do? It interpreted that Public Order Act prior restraint is reasonable in these circumstances. And then what the justices say,
even in the US, let me rectify you there. Even in the US, prior restraint is even in the US here, prior restraint is, I don't know. Let's also get to the facts.
You said in the US prior restraint what? Because I don't think you're about to say prior restraint is legal in any statute from freedom of speech.
Here's why I'm telling you that. Look, I have applied for permits here all the time. In Atlanta here, a certain number of people, in other words, if it is just 4 or 5 people, they can just go out there and protest. Easy, without seeking a permit or anything like that. But if you're going to be, I think 70, Musa, how many people was it? 75 people, or
and you will have to get
75 people or 100. No, let me say this. If it is 75 people or 100 people or something like that, you have to have a permit for that. You have to. It's not like you can just, the moment your crowd swells to that point and you know that this is the big crowd that's going to be out there, if you don't have a permit for it, everybody can get arrested. I know that because I've been applying for permits.
When you say permit, let's be honest.
I say it happens sometimes. When people went to the embassy of Israel embassy, I mean, they ended up arresting them.
Oh yeah, yes. And then Musa, this is how there's a difference with the permit. Gambia permit is not a notification requirement to get that permit. Here, almost every state put a floor, like the number of people, because they want to make sure that, okay, this crowd size to us as a law enforcement, if it hit this threshold, we must be present. Allow me, we have to be very, explain this to be very honest about it. Here,
Yeah.
The police don't say, no, we refuse any permit. The notification requirement is on you so that law enforcement is there to protect property and then life. And in fact, if crowd sites are bigger, sometimes there are some jurisdictions that would require you to place reasonable bond to make so you have to obtain insurances in order to make so if your people went out of line, properties get damages, those insurance will pay for that. But they don't stop you from, you can go and then demonstrate at your own peril. In Gambia, the contrast is not a notification for them to come. They have to actually grant that fiat that you can actually assemble. That's the distinction.
But what I'm saying is, in the Gambia's case too, that permit there over there is not so different from the US permit here. The permit, what has been happening? No, let me say this, Sergio. What has been happening in Gambia's case, to my mind, I mean, and in my own reading of it, of the law, is that police will illegally deny permit. And again, this is that's why I talked about how people are not challenging rules and laws in the courts, because Gambians, we just don't do these things. If you deny people a permit in the Gambia, nobody goes to the courts and say, look, we have been denied our right to freedom of assembly. Nobody has been doing that. Why are we not challenging those rules in court? Just because you apply for a permit in the Gambia, if the Inspector General of Police says, oh no, we are not granting you a permit because of this reason or another, it could be even the most flimsiest of reasons. If you take a matter like that to court, I'm sure the court might come back and say to the police, no. This, they don't do this. They have a right to assemble. This is what I'm trying to say. In the Gambia, because we don't challenge these rules in court, we tend to take them for at face value. If our rights are violated, we will say we rather just say, oh, we are in a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship. Look at how they are treating us. No. If you got it, Bora, what's Bora's last name again? Bora, Bora, Alaj Bora. When Alaj Bora, yes, when his rights were violated, he just didn't sit there and say, oh, we are under the dictatorship. We are under dictatorship. No. He went to court, and guess what? The court declared, they made a declaration in his favor. But in the Gambia, how many people's rights are violated every day by police officers, by security forces? And they just rather just say, we are under the dictatorship, we are under the dictatorship. When the courts are there, for a reason. So what I'm saying is, we can just sit here and say, the police have been denying permits, or they can deny you permit. Well, is that constitutional? That's the question. Does the Constitution actually allow it? If it doesn't, then obviously, so it's on us if we don't challenge these things in court.
I have a question for Sergio. Sergio, I listened to you and you delve into some of these things that you believe they're either red lines or concerns. And for me, they're not. Of course, you're the legal guy. For me, my red lines, what I would call the deal breakers, is the term limit. Any constitution that gives me this term limit, gives me 50+1. As far as I'm concerned, I think everything else can be on the table, really. Because for me, I do not understand. I think either you made the argument that in a certain way, we would be better off with the 1997 Constitution. And I'm sitting here saying, I need to be convinced that a 1997 Constitution without the 50+1, without the term limit, how in God's name that Constitution can be better. Forget about with this freedom, right for assembly and all of that. I really need you to convince me, Sergio.
No, my argument is if we are saying we should just settle for any constitution that has 2-term limit and then a 50% threshold, regardless of whatever provision is there, it's not, in my opinion, it's not even the case of lesser of two evil. It doesn't worth it.
Not any constitution. We are talking about this current draft.
This current version as is, without anything there.
As is, yes.
I would rather we remain with 97 Constitution for the simple
fact. Because you think the 1997 Constitution is much more superior?
No, it's not. It's not better. But my problem is this 2024 draft. If you looked at it holistically with 97 Constitution, holistically, yes, I am going to say 2024 draft is better if we are, for lack of better word, it's at least better, the lesser of two good than the 97 Constitution in some areas because of certain protections it gives to citizens, especially when it comes to freedom of media, land law, and then areas like citizenship. 97 Constitution, it has the same thing because they just lifted there. But even with Parliament's power to actually fire ministers, which 97 Constitution doesn't give us that. There are good provisions there in those areas. With it. My only thing is it is a trade-off for an overly, strong executive, and then it can be prone to abuse, just like the 97 Constitution is. Because the problem is where there are deal breakers, those things became entrenched clauses. We can only go through referendum to change that. And then the places where we think they are a little bit better, those are not considered entrenched clauses. And then any National Assembly with power, they can water it down to bring us back to 97 or even worse. That's my issue. So we are rather of having nothing and then still try to find something better than just accept something where we know changing it would be a huge hurdle, or we might not even have the resources to do that.
Sergio, term limit and 50 plus 1 day, I think
I disagree with Sergio. I disagree with Sergio heavily on this one.
Hold on. Look, you guys got to give me a chance now. I've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, Musa, we've been arguing about this since last week. We've all stated not just to settle for 50 plus 1 or the term limit. In fact, the time limit is not even explicit in the 2024 Constitution, right? So we're saying all the others, like, freedom of speech, the chapter 5 that was deleted, we're just not going to say, well, okay, that's fine. We're just going to settle for the 2024 because there's a 50 plus 1 or there's a term limit that is not even clear. I think that's where Sergio say, hey, if that's the case, right, maybe we might just well go with it. We're not saying that it's not great. I mean, it's better than the 1997, but just because we need to compromise for the sake of 50 plus 1 and term limit, I really don't think that's where majority of the Gambians are, because majority of Gambians are the chapter 5, which is important, not just because. No, hold on. Let me lie, because
careful when we say majority of people.
No. I said major because there was a polling that came. They love the 2020, and we keep saying this, like the 2020. The term limit was very, very explicit. They said including the transition period, right? So that was a little bit contentious, and they went and massaged it behind scene. They brought up this one, which can leave it to interpretation. So I think we need to poke holes, and Dawda Jallo and everybody at Barrow needs to come out and explain this. So we just cannot, my position is, just because we're so dire in need of 50 plus 1, we can just go with this and massage it a little bit when the key ingredients are still missing or has been altered. With all, no, don't keep chorusing. I'm saying my thought like you, right? So what I'm trying to say is, don't just think that people need to go with the 50 plus 1 just because Musa Jeng, that is dear to his heart. No, for me, 50 plus 1 is not. But that's not what
Musa is saying, though. Sorry, you are misquoting Musa. That's not what he's been saying.
I listened to this. I know. I listened to this 50 plus 1 fair term limit. But when is the term limit? It's not even clear. The term limit. Hold on. Let me finish, because I got them first, John. I gotta go taste it all. So I want to kind of add my thought to this. But I think what we're not saying that, we just got to move away, get away, leave everything on the table because we need to go with. No, that's not what people are saying. What we are saying is, at least things that are altered in the 2024 without explanation, right? And those are very important, not just for Barrow, but somebody who's going to succeed Barrow and in the future. I think our leaders needs to be held accountable. And that's what we're saying. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry, just a quick response. Last week, we all agreed. I have an issue the way it was rolled out. I would have respected them more, or would not even question their commitment if they had an addendum to basically highlight all the changes that were made and the reason for it. We can agree to disagree. So this whole idea of the rollout is water under the bridge. There's not a whole lot we can do about it. Manmane, personally, our democracy, and also, when I talk politics, I don't talk legal. Going into 2026, we will be better off if we have a term limit. And even the term limit, I went further to say this current term would be counted. I cannot stop Barrow from running in 2026. I wish he wouldn't. But even if he does, that would be the last term that he will be able to run again. I like that. I like my 50+1. This whole yanking of that leadership.
But
and
this
governance,
2024 draft don't guarantee you that if Barrow run 2026, that's his last term.
That's the problem.
That's what I mean. No, that's
yeah.
what I mean. That's why I want that to be cleaned up by the
Still
National
open
Assembly.
to interpretation. Still open to.
I want it to be cleaned up so that there is no ambivalent. I wouldn't leave it for the Supreme Court to decide whether he can or he cannot. So man, I'm not Lolu. I'm not Suma 50+1. I'm not gonna put a whole lot on this yanking of that chapter 5 Bobulin. Seriously.
No, chapter 5 is for me. I'm not even worried about that.
Make or break for me. All right. This confirmation of the House, that is not a make or break for me. Now, the other one that I would be a little bit sympathetic because of the appearance, an IEC chairperson. I really would also want them to get the National Assembly involved. In other words, I want something pragmatic. I want to get over with this 1997 constitution. Really. And 50+1, I think is important. Heavily important. Seriously, that will give us a shot. In the absence of 50+1, I think it's advantage incumbent come 2026. That's just me politically looking at it. I think with the 50+1, it will scramble it. It can be a game changer. Man, that's man lolagum. You know? So all the other stuff, Sergio, I know you're talking about there was something else that you mentioned.
Musa, but you still want some changes before it goes to referendum.
Absolutely.
That's my point. So here's the thing. I'm saying as is. We rather not have a document than as is. So your argument is,
I disagree with that.
If I understand Musa is saying, look, the document as drafted right now.
Yes.
While some of them might not be my bread and butter, but I still want some changes. For instance, Musa wants clarity that 2026 would be the last term. So what you are saying is the document as written, I'm not going to vote for it, but I will if the clause become clear that 2026,
correct,
that would be the last time.
So that's exactly Musa's point.
Yes. Exactly. My point is Musa is not accepting the document as is. That's what most people are saying. No one is saying that the document should not be reviewed and then make some adjustment and compromise. We are just saying if the document as written, nothing is going to change. Why bother pass it? That's different than saying that I don't care about it.
No. But Sergio, let me say this. All along, in fact, even the conversation that we are having here, all of us, with you here included with your brilliant legal perspective on these issues, it's all part of that conversation to really try to get something, some kind of a convergence of the ground. That's what this is all about. Because right now, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are listening to this conversation. And some of those people, who knows, maybe they might be sitting at the table when this issue comes up for review and for, adjustments and clarification and things like that. And hearing some of your brilliant legal scholars' views on it might be influenced by some of that. So at this point right now, that's why even when Coach came here with the red meat, I said, Coach, I get the red meat. All this Barrow is terrible. They didn't do this right way. They are all bad people.
Okay. Supreme Court. I got a question before
at the end of the day, let's focus on how do we literally sit down and make this thing happen for us as a country, so that tomorrow, in the end, we can at least live with a document that we all feel like, okay, this may not be perfect because we may not ever have a perfect document, but this is something that we can all live with, knowing fully well that moving forward, it's going to take, we are making progress. But if we are sitting here and keep insisting on this talk about, document as is, I'm not passing, nobody's saying it should pass as it is. And I don't hear anybody saying that. I haven't heard anybody saying that here.
So I have a question for both you and Musa, because I got to go. So here's my question. So as far as the 2020, and Sergio as well, your input is welcome on this. So as far as the 2024 goes, it says 2 terms. It's not very clear what that 2-term means. Now, if it goes to Parliament and, if there's a debate, they say, hey, the 2 terms is the 2 terms the president has already served. I mean, if we pass the document, we're not going to move forward on this until that 2-term explicit. That means President Barrow is not eligible to run again in 2026. Now, what do you guys say to that? I mean, is that something? Are we just pondering, or just trying to be partisan, or because people?
Can I answer it very quickly?
You're right.
I will embrace that. I'm gonna be a sabarkat bunyan oye dam sise indi ko mu sabaralma, because I will be so happy if the guy doesn't run in 2026. The only problem is it will not pass. We're all talking in. There are things that, let's say, the draft as it is, I don't think it will even pass.
No, it will not.
There's a need.
It will not.
To clean it up. If they don't, because look, let's call it for what it is.
This draft as it is not going to pass.
If it's not, Musa, if it's not passed, I don't want platitudes. I want specifics. If it's not passed, right now, you think that it's not going to pass. What do you think would be a reasonable compromise to ensure that it passes, including putting a cap on the term limit? I think that's what my question is.
I don't understand. What are you? Maybe Musa, you understand what he's asking.
No. It's very, very simple. You are saying, because I think I hear what I hear is, as it stands right now, it's not gonna pass. But if we say, hold on, you say you don't understand, so I'm clarifying. I'm trying to break it down. That way you can answer that question.
Break it down.
So as you certain the 2024 as it stands in its current draft, it's not gonna pass. No. My question to you is, what would you, if it needs to be massaged and need to be tweaked, your own words, tweaked, what would you think would be a reasonable compromise to ensure that it gets the blessing of those, lawmakers to ensure it passes and we have a new constitution?
But Musa cannot answer that. Musa cannot answer that for you.
I can answer it.
Are you speaking for those lawmakers?
No, Lima, what I think would be the ideal compromise, hopefully, that would bring everybody on board, would be that, that Barrow, yes, he'll be able to run in 2026, because you have to look at the NPP National Assembly members. If you say Barrow will not run in 2026, the chances are, I don't think it will pass, because Barrow is not going to support it. If Barrow is maybe guaranteed to run in 2026, and that would be his final term, there is a possibility that even the opposition lawmakers will say, you know what, the fact that we are having term limits, the fact that we're having 50+1, maybe this can be compromised. Because again, for this thing to pass and go through referendum, we have to have everybody on board. We have to have the United Democratic Party, DOI, GDC.
Because the threshold is so high.
Out there saying, please, our supporters, vote for this. We are on it. We are in it.
Yeah.
If they don't, it's going to pass.
Yeah. The threshold, Sarian, at the end of the day, some compromise has to take, or a lot of compromise has to take place here. Because this is not something that just needs, for instance, a simple majority, few people agree and that. No. It's not like that. And that's why I love the process as it is. Because at the end of the day, if anybody is interested in having this passed, if we all really, 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 really believe that we would love to see a new constitution, and we're not just using words and trying to pay lip service to the cause, then that means everybody has to sit down and come up with a genuine compromise. Because why? It would require our vote. Because anything that requires 2/3 majority, that is a very, very high threshold. So in the end, if you either compromise or you just watch it dead, that's just like the last time. Remember the last time? That's what happened. So in the end, the conversation we are having, that's why I said it's important that we all sit down and then try to find a compromise, because without it, we are just wasting our time. We might as well not even engage in this conversation. Because
I appreciate your input on this one, but I don't think you answered my question, because I wanted to hear from you.
Musa,
you did it partially.
So what was your question now? What did you want me to answer exactly? Maybe because I thought you were asking Musa.
All I want is, Bankamane to articulate without
Yes.
strings attached. I don't want you to go into this rigmarole about,
No,
we
you're
need to
talking about
comply.
Musa.
No,
That's why I told you.
hold on a second, hold on a second. What I wanted to, in Banka's perspective, right?
Yes.
Today, when you had a chance to be, I understand you're not a lawmaker. I get that part. But as a reasonable person, and you are very passionate about the affairs of Gambia, who sits on the platform and discuss this, what would you term as a reasonable compromise when it really comes to the term limit that you think at least would sway majority? And you said the threshold is very, very high. So we can sit here and talk and go in circles, but the threshold, in order to attract for folks to come in and buy that, what would be a reasonable compromise when it comes to that?
Okay, very good. So because now you are not asking about me, but you're asking about what I think needs to happen for it to pass. That's a good question. Now, in my own perspective, what will take a reasonable compromise for this to pass right now is more clarity on the term limit thing. Then there needs to be language needs to be revisited, is what I'm trying to say. How the language is going to be couched, I don't know. So there are a million ways to do that. But as long as the language is couched to make it explicitly clear that Barrow's term is, in this regard, is going to be, well, his last term will be 2026. That's when he's going to serve. He's not going to be able to run in 2031. That will, I believe, is what's going to be a reasonable compromise that will get it through the finish line. I do believe that. If we don't make that clear, if we don't really hone in on that issue, because it's one issue that's making there's a lot of noise about it, and everybody's saying one thing and one thing alone. Those who are opposed to it, the language as it stands right now, is that it's not clear enough, that it leaves too much room for interpretation, that it potentially means that Barrow can run again in 2031, and even based on Sajos' own interpretation of it, he is saying that there is some strong legal basis for it to mean that this term doesn't count. But that even though he's also open to the notion that there is a possibility, there's a room for another interpretation in that regard. So, but again, that part, we need to go back. If they sit down to negotiate, and I will implore the government, I will advise the Attorney General, Jallo, to basically go back and look at this language very, very, very closely, because leaving it open to interpretation is suspicious. Is the people don't trust the intent of government in this regard, and they don't trust the intent of the president in that regard. They believe that the president is leaving it open so he can go try to do the Makisal, try to pull the Makisal on the Gambian people. That is come back and say, well, the language as it stands allows me to run in 2031, for instance. So I think that a clear, if they mean that they want Barrow to run in 2031, well, let them make them clear also. Let them say that. That's what they mean. Yeah. So at least if we are going to have a disagreement, or we're going to have a conversation, then at least we will all know on what basis are we having this conversation, because everybody's position will be crystal clear. Just like those who are saying we want a clear language as to Barrow's inability to run in 2031, I think they too need to come out with a clear language as to Barrow's ability to run in 2031. If they mean it that way, let them say it. If they don't mean it that way, then well, say it. Also make the language clear. So I think that's very important.
Thank you, Banka.
Why are we afraid of the, I don't even think the running part, for me, I'm not worried about that. In fact, I think any constitution that come in, and then I put a, open paper on this thing in 2020 that it should not even retroactively go. That was my position. It's give him the ability to run. Any new one that came should give him 2 terms freshly, just in the interest of equity and fairness. That's my position. And I don't think that should be an issue for anyone, politics aside. Because if we are afraid running, if we have a 50+1, it already means everyone is conceding. This is the only reasonable interpretation of that argument, saying we should expressively stop him from running. Meaning everyone is conceding that over 50% of Gambians overwhelmingly would vote for him because they want him. How do you know that? I'm not worried about that. If we have a 50+1 threshold, even if the constitution give him 2 extra terms, if Gambians in a free and fair election wanted to vote for him, that's the choice of the people. It means the people are happy with what he's doing. I'm okay with that. And I don't think the negotiation should come with he shouldn't be allowed to run again. That fear is we are all conceding then he is very popular. Then he must be doing something well for people to vote for him in a free and fair election.
Well,
So if
Sergio, I beg to differ. I beg to differ.
We all, but Sergio, there is also a political reality.
Yes, I beg to differ on that one big time. Because look, I think Gambians just don't like the idea of somebody staying in power for more than 2 terms anymore. Because we've been on that road before. Jawara was there for 30 years. Yahya was there for 22 years. I think for Gambians, that is one key. If there is one, in fact, let me just put it this way. If there is
who is responsible for putting the presidents there if we have a 50+1?
No. But people used to say about Yahya. No, but the people used to say that about Yahya.
No, Yahya is a simple majority. First past the poll. We are saying this is for me. My argument was, in terms, to me, that's not a deal breaker. If a new constitution give him 2 terms, I'm okay with it. I'm not worried about that. That's not even a deal breaker to me, because you can expressively put a compromise that this constitution says Barrow's last term would be 2026. It cannot mention him as a person. It can only say that, okay, whoever is serving, you have to serve to, when this constitution comes into power, whoever is the sitting president, that would count as your first term. Or it could go retroactively and saying that whoever was a president of Gambia previously and then you serve for 2 terms, you are barred under this constitution. It can do that. I'm saying we can go there. The question would become whether a new constitution, considering 97 constitution, whether that would be legal or not. But let's even assume those things are there. It's a constitution. Barrow can go within 3 years into his term if he thinks he has the numbers, can change that. That's not an argument. He can flip the constitution, do an amendment, which the law allows him to do.
Entering clause, though.
That's what I'm saying. Even with an entering, Senegal has an entering clause, but they went to referendum and then.
Yeah, but that's why Maki said. But that's why Maki couldn't put it out.
Yeah, with an entering clause, we all know that it will be very difficult to.
Yeah, that's why.
It's not impossible. I think it's possible. I'm not. It's not.
But Sergio, you can say that about. You can say that about any provision in that constitution. Then you can literally say that about any provision. I think what we need to focus on is this. That for me, like to answer Sarang's question again, based on what Sarang asked me, and that is, what do I think it will take for this thing to pass? That's what he asked me. What is the reasonable compromise? I said, based on what people are saying, based on the popular concern that is being raised out there, this is what it will take. That's what I meant. That's what I said. Because to me, the way I'm looking at this, without clarity on that term limit issue, start beginning with this term here, it will be very, very difficult to see this thing passed. That was my answer as it relates to that. Whether that's a reasonable thing or not, or whether we should just allow it and Barrow.
Banka,
that's what
history. History is on our side. The only reason why the 2020 did not pass is because of that retroactive law Bobolin. It came down to the term limit. If they were able to make a compromise, this thing would have passed. Now, this gentleman is asking whether 50+1 will still not guarantee Barrow winning. Bro, I'm not naive. I know that we can even have 50+1 and the guy can win. But I can guarantee you one thing: we have a better chance with 50+1 than.
No, and Musa, let me help you there. The reason why 50+1 countries love it is because, and I've always made this argument here before, and I've been insulted for it. Everybody was making noise when Barrow won. Now they said, oh, the election was stolen because all along what I was predicting was going to happen was what actually happened, based on the reasons that I'm just about to articulate once again. And that is that you cannot win an election without a coalition. If you don't have a coalition, you cannot win an election. You don't even stand a chance. The Republican Party in the United States is a coalition. The Democratic Party is a coalition. I can go through this, and Musa, when you look at Democrats or Republicans, you notice the factions in there, the various political leanings. They even have a word for it. They'll call some conservative, they'll call some moderate, they'll call some liberal, because these people technically would have been in 2 different parties in the African world, the way we do our politics. They would have been totally different parties. But they came together to form a coalition despite their different political strands. This one is pro-choice, this one is anti-choice, this one is for this one for that. But they came together and formed a political party, and they are called Republicans. If you look among Democrats too, you see the same kind of dynamic. All I am trying to say is that In the Gambia too, we need to kind of go back to the drawing board and realize that if you want to win an election, you have to have a broad coalition. The broader it is, the better for you. If you have a broad coalition, you stand a better chance. Now, now which brings me to the 50+1 issue. What the 50+1 does is, it forces a coalition. It does. Because look, when the election is going to the second round, you better believe everybody, that's when all the parties are willing to make a compromise to get the other parties on board. And what that does is they form a coalition. So that coalition there is the building process allows for smaller parties, opposition parties, for instance, to coalesce. And then beef up their numbers to be able to go past the 50% mark. This is why many countries in Africa are now kind of crazy about this 50+1 idea, because they believe it's the only way to really give an incumbent a run for his or her money, because it allows for smaller parties to call. Otherwise, they generally don't do it. Some parties will sit there and insist that we are the bigger party. You have to come and fold your chairs and bend under us and beg us to for you to be part of us. And the smaller parties are saying, no, you need us to win. So if we have some leverage here. If we don't do this on a equal footing, level field, then you go your way, we go our way, and in the end, they all lose an election. This is how it happens all the time. So the 50+1 idea, this is where it actually comes from. So for the one that was asking you, Musa, how does that? Yes, that's the reason. That's the main reason behind it. It forces a coalition. That's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. The politics of it more than anything else. But Banga, there is something else. I think listening to Dr. Cisse, and this is an issue that Pastor Amba just raised, and I raised it last week, and they went all over me, telling me, oh, Buchibole UDP, you always like to put UDP in it. And my thing was, some of these changes were made basically as a setup. I mean, as far as what would UDP do? And listening to Dr. Cisse, basically making it a UDP affair. For me, I think it's poisoning the well. If you push UDP aside, they're going to take their stand. You think you're going to blame it on them if it doesn't pass. And they're like, okay, that's how you want to play it? Meantime, we're going to blame it on you. And you know what would happen? At the end of the day, there won't be no draft constitution. Possible, because these people are much more interested in blaming each other. And that's sad. That I don't think that should be the approach that the NPP folks, especially Dr. Cisse, and hopefully the Attorney General, that's not what they are going to do. You know,
yeah. No,
I mean, let them put emphasis on how can we find common ground? How can we harmonize? Because again, all of these folks have to be excited about it. If they're not, it's not going to pass. If Mr. Dabo said, if one little clause is removed, we will not support it. I mean, that's dead on arrival. I can tell you that right now. Yeah. You know, if a man is taking a position like that, for me, there's political posturing. But I mean, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and maybe then you'll just politically take a stand, just so that you guys will climb down. I get that. But now let's get to work at the National Assembly and try to find that. Why is Dr. Cisse, I mean, then you from left field, hey, man, you know what? What happened in 2020? These people sabotage it. You're already poisoning the well. That can be a problem. Really?
Now, look, Faramos, look, at the end of the day, let's look at it this way, right? Let's look at it this way. When it comes to a constitution, it's supposed to be an enduring document.
Right.
It's supposed to be across the boards. I mean, literally applicable to everybody. Equal under the law is what it says. That's the constitution that they are referring to. That means nobody has, more powers than the other and all that kind of stuff. And with that in mind, we need to really focus on the idea that in the end, when we build a constitution, we should build with a common cause, because today you are up, tomorrow you could be down, and you need the protection of the constitution. Even when you are up, you still need the protection of the constitution, because the constitution is the only one. Is the only one capable of making us equal. Is the only one capable of doing that. And so whether you are the government in power or whether you are not, everybody must make sure that push for a constitution where whether they shouldn't look at it like, okay, this is to my favor. It's going to be bad for the other guy. So what if the tables got turned around? Now you are the other side. The other hand is over there, and the same rules will now have to be just like APRC. The 1997 Constitution is their baby, Yahya Jammeh's baby. But guess what? I'm sorry, they are looking at the APR. Yahya Jammeh is looking at the 1997 Constitution now and saying, I want a new Constitution because this is not good for me. Because really, it's really bad for the opposition. Even the simple majority itself alone is not so good for the opposition. Because as it stands right now, Barrow could win with 30% of the votes, 30%, even 25%. It all depends. If UDP gets 20, this one gets 5, that one gets 3, this one gets, and Barrow gets 30, he is the winner. That's the way it is. So in the end, it doesn't serve anybody or any party or any individual for that matter to really try to do this in calculation of what does it do for me. Because that me is in relation to where you are right now, what your position is right now. If tomorrow and these things are not, they can change. I mean, we are in power changes hands, people's position changes. Today you are there, tomorrow you are not there. All that kind of stuff. With that in mind, then basically create something that even if you are not there, it will start to protect you. You will want to see it maintained. You will want to see, want to keep it there because it serves you just like as much as it serves everybody else. So I get it. The blame game. If Dr. Cesar says, "Oh, if it fails, it's UDP's fault. It's their fault." I get that. Everybody's going to blame everybody. In the end, that's what it's going to boil down to. But I hope that in the end, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to insist on what we have on the table. And so if the other party doesn't agree to it, we just blame them and then we move on and let's not have a constitution. No, the goal right now should be, okay, I don't like their position. I don't like what they are saying. These people are a problem anyway, but let's sit down and talk and see how as a country do we create a document that reflects our aspiration as a people. So that whether you are in power or not in power, whether you are it or you are not it, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are strong or weak, whether you are Mandinka or Jola or Sarawale or Christian or Muslim, it is there to serve all of us as a people. This should be the end game. This should be the goal. And I hope that everybody will literally focus on that, not these high stakes game where you are saying, if we take out even one sentence, I'll be opposed to it. This one saying, well, I'm not going to take out the sentence. Yeah, no. This one, I'm saying that's what Honorable Dabo said. And I think that's a position I hope you too will walk away from. And likewise, the CISA too needs to walk away from this position that, okay, we'll just have it our way because it prepares that we blame the UDP for it. I think that too is a bad idea. So both sides need to I get the political rhetoric, but in the end, let them all remember that we need to go back to the table and sit down and come with something that works for us as a people. Not this calculated thing, how does it serve me? Because if you notice, Musa and Sarian, the 2020 draft, proposed draft, went through that kind of problem. When my friend Karamba and some of these people were literally pushing for a language that pretty much to me, I was very uncomfortable with as it relates to the Christian minority, for instance. I was hearing arguments like we are a majority Muslim country. No. Constitutions don't operate like that. In fact, they don't even look at it that way at all. If you look at the founding fathers of the United States, the framers of the Constitution of the United States, they were all devout Christians. But the separation of church and state, is central to the United States Constitution. They could have said, look, we are a Christian nation, we are all devout Christians, there is no Muslim among us. let's do what we gotta, no Jews among us, let's do what we gotta do. But no, they said, look, we cannot be here trying to push for something that literally it cannot stand the test of time. Let's put something together where tomorrow the kind of the plural society, the multicultural society, the diverse society that we are going to become, this constitution will serve us as a people. That was their goal in the end. Gambia too, we need to think like that when we frame such a thing, and make sure that we don't look at it in terms of who is the majority, who is minority, how do you get to the majority to the exclusion of minority. The moment you have
But Banka, are you
compromised the whole
suggesting
idea of this.
2020 acts for an Islamic state?
No.
Because Gambia,
What I was
okay.
saying was when the debate was raging
Yeah.
about the preamble.
Yeah, the secular.
Yes, the
No,
secular.
but
The preamble.
secular, I don't think people misunderstood this thing. I think it's a misnomer. Secular means there is no state religion, meaning if you put that in the constitution, it's a secular state, meaning there is no state religion, everybody is
Yeah,
what
but
you
people
are.
had problem with that though.
Yeah,
But Sergeant,
but
that was a big controversial issue.
It's like if you said, like secular is a term, it's a word. What that means is there would be no state-sanctioned religion. Now, you could also put in another way in so many words, like in the U.S. Constitution, it doesn't, U.S., we're in a secular state here. I'm in a secular country, but the word secular is not in the Constitution. What they say that Congress shall make no law, recognizing one religion.
That recognizes any religion. Yes.
So if you use, instead of going so
no,
many
but
words,
look, I think it's all in the language, but the spirit is the same. It's all in the language, but the spirit is the same. I think.
For me, I don't even think the word secular matters as long as 97 Constitution made it very clear.
No, but Sergeant, that's not what they are saying there.
At that time, it was a controversy. If you remember, people were insisting, some were insisting that the secular has to be there, especially the Christian community wanted secular to be there, because they're saying, look, here we had our experience with Jammeh, who came up with this Islamic State thing, so they wanted it. And then you had
that was illegal, but he is very powerful. Jammeh was very powerful and able to do that illegally, and then it continues. Which brings me to the current draft. That's why, for me, I think it's a lot of disservice to Gambians. We are all engaged in politics, and then the small issues where we are fighting on, and then things that actually matter. The foundation itself, it's unequal. If Jammeh has that so much power, when the Constitution actually proscribed it, he was able to do it because he has military, and then no one challenged him. No one even went to court for it.
They did.
And then
they did actually. When he changed it, and then Jammeh went to court, and the Supreme Court said,
they tried to. Yes.
No. That was, I mean, the Islamic State. Islamic State. When he did that, by then he was Alpha Omega. When Kemesen's issue was in 2001. That was they want to change some amendment. It never went through referendum. You cannot do that. And then Supreme Court was like, no, you can't do that.
So it was the secular thing. The secular
issue. It was the Islamic State thing.
Islamic State. By the time he was doing that, because he has diluted the Constitution to so much, and then he has so much power at that time, we were all afraid to openly go against him, his court. So it brings me to the point here.
That's the same Constitution you're saying. I mean, in a way, we wouldn't mind to settle for.
Because the reason, let me bring you to that. In as much as I find it repugnant, the 97 Constitution. My point is this document as is. It gives so much power to the president. No one can stop. Even Parliament, who has oversight to impeach him, it would almost be impossible to, find a unicorn, vote for him in Gambia, then impeach a sitting president under this draft how it's written, because it concentrated power in one area. That's my problem. So we are starting from the wrong foundation. So if you have a leader who is not compassionate and then who wanted to actually unleash that power, they could do what Jammeh did. I'm not worried about the 2-term, let it start later. My problem is if the foundation is weak, how can you have strong institutions to challenge that, system once it's erected? That's where I have issues with. For me, I'm not worried about 2-term. For me, I think what is right, what should be done is any constitution that's coming in, and then even if I were to sit with any leader of a political, I'd be like, look, especially Mr. Dabo, who is a lawyer, we can agree to disagree in certain areas. I'd be like, look, he should have the opportunity to run for 2 more, even that would give him 20 years. My problem is Gambians should see within themselves to say, no, we are not going to do that. That we are not going to vote for you because of the 50+1. Politically, they may not want that, but I'm saying to me, that shouldn't be a deal breaker. The deal breaker should be why, for every other public official, when it comes to impeachment, we have one rule. When it comes to president, we have a separate rule. Why would the Constitution allow that if the president dies and then you don't have a running mate on the ticket, somebody who is not elected by any universal suffrage will lead the people for so long. That's where I have issues with. Why would we complain that we don't have a lot of resources, but we concentrate all the money caring for few people, even if they work for government for less than 10 years. In some cases, 5 years, you quit without reaching the age of, you don't have to reach the age of retirement. You would be best paid full retirement. Why are we doing that? These are the issues Gambians should talk about. But we are I don't know. We are worried about things that has no consequences. So
Sajo, you touch on some very important issues here that we are trying to. I think it gets over. We talk about it, but it get overshadowed with this 50+1 and the term limit, right? And I think you are up to something here, and I'm glad you are highlighting these key issues here in the Constitution. And also, the gist of the pushback is this thing is like, yeah, the Constitution is nice. We're having a Constitution, but what we are having, this might potentially, as you said, give the president too much power. And that whole thing that we call about dictatorship and all this, he's absolute. He can go back. That's what we're talking about. If we're talking 50+1 is not the only key ingredient of this. We got to talk about, if we keep talking about system change. What is system change? What are the formulas? What are the mechanics of system pay? Is our institution strong enough to hold those? As you can see right now, someone comes in less than 10 years. Well, he got a good retirement package for the rest of his life. Is that fair? Is that fair?
Sarian, look, maybe words have meaning here. We have had a system change. We went from Jammeh to Adama Barrow. So that's a system change. Well, maybe you are trying to refer to this.
We have a regime change, not system change.
That
is from the cousins,
that is what it is. If you want to talk about system transformation now, maybe that's a different story. Maybe that's where you wanna lean towards. But I'm trying to tell you, we have had a system change in the Gambia. That's what we have had. What you want to talk about is system transformation, maybe, and saying let's gut the whole entire system and come up with something new and different. Maybe we can have a conversation about that. But we have had a system.
I don't know about system change. I think what we replace.
That's why I said words have meaning. See, when the moment you talk about system, we have had a system change in the Gambia. We have a different system in the Gambia now. What you probably want to say is that let's have a transformation where we got the whole entire, whatever is there currently, and what was there before. We literally just have something built from scratch, build the whole thing from.
We have a few minutes. I guess we just go around real quick.
Yeah, quickly, and I will conclude. The fact of the matter is, no matter how we cut and slice and dice this issue, this constitution issue, we need to recognize the fact that this is a very, 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 very serious issue. And at some point, we need to move forward. And what that means is, we don't have to sort of sit here and delegitimize one's position or another side's position or that person's position. What it requires is that, because feelings are very strong on this, is to sit down and talk about it among ourselves and negotiate these differences and come to some resolution about what we can live with as a people and move forward. Because this is about tomorrow. It's not about today. All these things about certain conditions and, making noise about this, making noise about that, in the end, that just makes all of us feel good about how we, how I took this position, how I said it, how I did this. Great. But we come 2026 and we're still on the 1997 constitution. Well, guess what? What we call in Mandinka Assembly Fracaso. That's what it is. Everybody is going to face the consequences of that. This is not going to be your problem or my problem. It's going to be our problem. So we need to be fully aware of that and not turn this into another political football where this one side is saying, how do we make the other side look bad? Or how do we make sure this fails? All that. Let's get away from all that. So I'm with the Bar Association on this, and I always come back to them because I think they are the most measured and the most reasonable on this issue. That is saying, look, We have our reservations about how this was done. We don't like the way the process began. We don't like the way the government has gone about this. But guess what? We need to recognize the fact that this is needed. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. The consultation that was skipped, that we're complaining about, let's sit down and have that consultation among ourselves at the table. And let's come up with something that we can live with so that we can move forward for the sake of us and our children, our children's children. This is very important. All this other stuff, red meat stuff that the Pastor Majaus and the Tukuro Sisa, they are not here. Let me talk about them. Pursuing. These guys are cuckoo. They are weird and they are creepy. Okay? They are weird and they are creepy. That's what they are. They are MAGA folks. They think like Donald Trump and his folks. This is the problem with these folks. Okay? Now, all jokes aside, though, this is I meant every word as far as us really the need for us to sit down and come up with something that really will take us forward. This is very, very important.
So, Brother Sajo, your final observation, and tell us how we can definitely find common ground, hopefully, because we definitely need this to pass.
I mean, if the leaders of the parties or people who have, congregation are willing to do service for Gambians, something will pass, and then they can do that. It's for the leaders to preach to their congregation, people who follow them, to listen to them, or National Assembly's members, actually grow concern, and they know that, look, I'm doing this for the Gambian people. To me, Constitution has to be consultative. It's a consensus building. It wasn't done with the current 2024 draft. I'm not too married to that. For me, my thing is, just because it doesn't go through consultation before it's gazetted, it should be thrown away. My contention is, if it comes to the people's house, there people should engage in conversation to make certain changes, and then give a document that would stand for prosperity. And then that's where every individual National Assembly members must be thinking about what is good for Gambia rather than party or whatnot, because we are making a document for posterity. That's my argument. No one should kill it because you were not consulted prior to being gazetted. But during National Assembly, changes ought to be made there. I would not going to ask anyone or tell anyone that draft as is should be passed. I am very much happy with certain provisions that I see there. And then, to be honest, if you read the document, there are very protections for Gambian. But with all that, to me, the document as written should not pass, because from the word go, the Constitution is the foundation. It set up the system of governance we would have. It creates an imbalance, and then there is no true separation of power. If we don't correct that anomaly, we are setting ourselves for a failure. The system would never work, and then we would keep coming back to the same issue. So for that being the case, just because we are desperate at the 11th hour, we cannot compromise the basic values and tenets of true representative government, human rights, and democracy. That's where the conversation should be. I don't think the conversation should be on two-term. If we have a very good document with strong institutions, whether someone is going to run two-term or not, that system would check itself. To me, that's my foundation. And then I think that's where Gambians should be focused on, rather than the political, accept of it and saying that, look, we need to gain momentum here and then get someone out. That's a score for me. Like, I'm collecting points. You hurt me, I hurt you. I'm going to restrict you. That's what I don't want. Gambians should not be buried in the term limit and others, and then forget that this document basically doesn't address how, when we start the government, it's going to lift them out of poverty, how it's going to make the resources protected to make sure that those in the provinces, those who don't have opportunity to even sit in school, the foundation is good for them to have a better life, because it's not catering for them. We just sit as those. Gambia, the problem is those who goes to school think that the government is about them. We don't have a social security system for the farmers. So why would you give half of the state resources to somebody who the farmer is paying taxes? Those are some of the most important things that need to be addressed there. To be, I think that matters to me more than the term limit. Term limit should be there, but retroactive or not, I'm okay with saying that you could run for the next 2 terms. I want the 50+1. I think Gambians should want that. Gambians need to have a true separation of power. the executive, the legislature, and then the judiciary should be two separate arms, co-equal, operating with checks and balances in all of them. That's what I want. If they have that, and then make sure that there is one retirement plan for all civil servants, to make sure that we are not catering to one group, special group than the other. And then since when those constitutions start mentioning how we pay and pension one particular person than the other, that should be by legislation. Those are the things that need to come up. And I hope Gambians don't get buried in the political conversation and then forget about things that actually would change life for their parents who are living, outside the main spectrum of government.
Brother Sarian,
Yes, sir, Faramos.
go ahead, man. You're closing, bro.
No, I think the conversation is great, and there is passion, and we are having an honest conversation. I think it's great. Some will have divergent views, what is appealing to folks and what is not appealing. But I think whatever takes place is one thing that I wanted to add to this conversation is I think Gambia, we are at crossroads. Honestly, our political dialogue we need to insert more civility into our conversation. I think people need to hear what people's concerns are and adhere to it, because as someone who has a dissenting voice, if you're criticizing the government and you continue to do the same thing, you continue to hurt your neighbors, fellow Gambians, it doesn't do any good. It creates a political vacuum. Of that political vacuum, if you're not listening, people don't feel that you empathize with them, you share their values, you're going to lose it. And I think we've seen it, and there is more coming. And I think people need to be measured. Attacking people, insulting people, it's not going to do any good for you. You can debate. Musa, you and I can sit on every Sunday. We go at each other's throat. But at the end of the day, there is no hard feelings. We call each other and we speak, we laugh, we're like brothers. And I think that needs to continue. Last week, we seen a trend on social media that is disturbing. If I am quiet, I don't speak about it, I'm a hypocrite, and I'm adding to that same conversation, right? Taking swipe at accuse or attacking someone personally, it doesn't do any good. If you want people to come on your side, I think you need to persuade them. You need to convince them. Don't make them scared. Don't make them scared, because if they see themselves not part of you, not inclusive, at the end of the day, you're going to lose them and your numbers are going to shrink. And if your numbers shrink, you are not going to achieve your desired goal. And that's all I have, Musa, for today. And I yield.
I have a big announcement, but I'm not going to do it. It's going to be part of my closing without hearing from the people that help us bring this program every Sunday. Let's hear them first, and I'll tell you this big announcement, bro.
Believe the hype, because it's that good. A true kitchen essential. Get Candy Spice products to impress your family and friends with great food, creating flavorful memories. We have pepper sauce, marinades, gourmet spices, barbecue sauces, fruit butter, African snacks, and much more. Every order gets a gift. Yes, you heard that right. Every order gets a gift. Candy Spice, it's handcrafted and all natural. We have options, you choose. Order at www.candyspice.com.
testing before you become ill. And above all, consult with your doctor when you do not feel well. For more information, please visit us online at newworldinternational.org.
Sariang Banka, it was a good show, and thank you obviously to Sajo in Tukulosi. As always, I think the conversation will continue. But there is one thing though, Banka. We all talked about how this whole thing was rolled out. Non-consultation, the changes that were made. We all get that. People do not trust this government. And if they really want this thing to fail, I think, the Dr. C says, the Attorney General, I think they need to change the rhetoric. Because for this thing to pass, everyone, all the political parties, they have to go out there and fight for it. If the government is really committed, because Barrow always talks about having a constitution to be part of his legacy, it's really important to him. Then maybe he needs to do the work, what is necessary for this thing to pass. This was a president that was elected to serve only 3 years. He has served 10 and maybe even 15, the possibility of 15. Bro, for him to make the necessary compromises, for him to be able to reach out to the other side, so that at least let's have a new beginning. Nobody is saying that a new constitution will be the silver bullet that is going to solve all our problems. Nobody is saying that. But at least we know what we have is not sustainable. What we have, as that is the 1997 constitution, it does not help our democracy. And to be honest with you, remember, the fight was always to bring an end to self-perpetuating rule. That was really the fight, Banka, for 20-something years. Now, in the absence of still maintaining the 1997 constitution, I think that's a disservice for everything that we have done. Here is an opportunity. It's not going to pass unless and until we compromise. Compromise also, we need to be careful. The way we put things out there, coming with this rhetoric, like you said, even the UDP, like making any changes, we will not vote for it. I wouldn't do that. I don't think it helps. We need to be open and say, okay, let's take it to the National Assembly. But listening to Dr. Cisse and what he said on GRTS, that's a non-starter. Anybody listening to him, all along, they don't want this thing to pass. They just want to use it as a political weapon against the opposition, saying that the only reason why it's failing, 2020, nyoko drill, here they go again, nyoko drillat. Just for whatever reason, to score political points. We need to think long-term. How does this new draft with certain changes, how will that help in the long term? That should be the question. And I think if we start thinking like that, bro, and then can I talk with civility? Because again, it is not going to pass. In the National Assembly, at this juncture, they don't have the vote. The math is not there. 75% of the Gambians would have to actually get up and vote for it. In the absence of Mama Kande, Nyom Halifa, the United Democratic Party, all of them going out there and campaigning for it, including the NPP, it is not going to pass. So, so I'm hoping, on the 28th, we will listen to the Attorney General and the government. We will look at the addendum. We will look at their argument, why some of these changes were made, and why was it done. We'll give them all ears. But at the end of the day, they need to be able to sell it to people. In the absence of that, Banker, like you said, next 5 years, we will be talking about constitution. Bobu Moy Digger. So we will be back next Sunday. I don't know whether you'll be here, my friend. Banker, you always make a difference on this platform. And when it comes to between Yahya Pap Samba, you know where I stand. I cannot be part of this activism.
The guy is weird in his thinking. He is weird.
Just to be fair, though, there is a rating and scorecard that came out, and that really. Yeah,
the UDP rating and scorecard. The UDP rating and scorecard.
That coach came 100% according to Lamin.
Sol Baji, what's the big announcement? I wanted to go to space so that they can listen to this ad.
So Sol has not been listening all along. And with him, the big announcement is always you have to literally see here. Barrow is a dictator. He's terrible.
No, no,
He's the worst thing since
no, no.
Strasbourg. And then that will be big announcement for someone.
Banka, he was listening. He was taking his shots every now and then. He picked a snippet.
But you know, I
from
know
your
people will be
compass.
dropping off, and we
Yeah,
forget
yeah,
our
he man.
ads. These are our partners.
Yeah, him and Musajeng, he was listening. It was that Saul was just doing his thing, man. Oh, this is illegal. We're not gonna accept this.
When a perception is everything. Lalo had the government has lied far too many times. Don't compromise. Don't compromise.
I think if Saul was a lady, a coach would have married him very, very quickly, sir. These two would have been a proper couple.
Arian Gaine, you did not fight too much today. Like
No, because sometimes you gotta get that stigma, that Trump said stamina. So today I woke up with low energy. So that low energy thing, today I have to walk a fine line. I have to caution because I see something on the horizon that I'm not very happy, and I'm telegraphing my message.
No, Sarian. Sarian, the truth is,
a big car. Why I can't.
Mane, the truth is, Sarian belongs in the weird and the creepy group. That's what it is. He's weird and he's creepy.
Hi guys. We will be back next Sunday. Inshallah. Thank you for all our viewers staying with us every Sunday. We think that we don't even know half of the time what we're talking about. You're always there with us. So that makes a difference. All right, man. Later.